Welcome everybody to Rendezvous with the present moment, rendezvous with the future, the past, coming here for the Holy Trinity of whatever we're going to get up to. So, let's begin with a bit of music. What would you like to hear? Let me know. I can't hear you. Okay, let's see. What about... Oh yeah. Rendezvous. Okay, so today we're talking about the ethics of eating. Um, so that's a pretty spicy topic, pardon the pun. There's a lot of meat to this topic. I think it's very... I've got a lot of fresh insights for you. A lot that I've been marinating on, and things just kind of fermenting. I don't know if thoughts ferment. Do they? Should they? What else? What other terrible puns do I have for you? I guess hopefully you don't have an allergy to truth. Okay, I'll stop there. So I'm going to go through basically, from my point of view, like I've thought about this quite a lot, and what is fair and what's not fair in terms of diet. So there's three basic aspects I'm going to divide this into. Health, so your own individual wellness in relation to food. Health, ethics, or you could say maybe justice, or the minimization of suffering for the animals, or all the beings of the earth. So we've got human health, could say the ethical dimension of minimizing suffering for other sentient beings, or you might say ahimsa. That's a better way to say it. Ahimsa means non-violence. I was just looking this up before. What is that word? And oh yes, it means non-violence. Coming from Buddhism and Hinduism. I think Gandhi was using this idea. Anyway, so health, ahimsa, and ecology. So what's good for the environment? Well, good for the ecosystem of the earth, helping Mother Nature flourish sustainably. So that's, we're going to look at different basic different diets. Not a lot of detail, but just veganism, vegetarianism, pescatarianism, being an omnivore. Cannibalism, we're not getting into. I think we can rule that one out straight away. Not good. But first, I think straight off, we should address the fact that a lot of people, I think, don't even want to think about this. We just want to do what we want to do. And in general, that's something, we can probably all relate to in some sense, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this thing that I want to do. Or maybe I should do this thing that I don't want to do. So when your desires and aversions, when your preferences conflict with your conscience, or conflict with your sense of what's probably wise, there are two possible responses. One is you pay attention and you think about it and you listen to your conscience and then make a decision. The alternative is to repress the awareness that there is potentially an issue. And so I think often we want to do something, we're very motivated for that. And so when these alarm bells go off, like, oh, are you sure? Well, not even alarm bells, but just when your conscience taps you on the shoulder, hey, there is a temptation to just say, well, I really want this, so I don't want to. If I listen to my conscience, it might lead me to realize that I shouldn't do this thing. Okay, so I'm not even going to I'm not giving that the chance to happen. I'm not even going to look into this, right? And so I think a lot of people who, they love whatever, their hot dogs and blah, blah, or their, way of eating, and they hear people saying that there's something wrong with it, they don't even want to look into it because they're too attached to what they have. And at least if you bury your head in the sand and ignore what these people are saying, then you can have the plausible story of, they're just crazy, they're just exaggerating, and I'm okay, I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm still a good person, so that's one way to do it. But I would like to, probably people like that haven't clicked on this video, but maybe there's an element of that in all of us, and so I would just like to invite you, whoever's listening, just it's actually in your interest to look into everything. But I'll give you a little escape card. For if anything, whatever you learn in this or think about due to this podcast, you can always just say, here's your get out of jail free card, all right? I offer to you. Look, yeah, I understand these qualms and issues people have with my dietary choices, but I'm choosing to live the way my family traditionally has lived. My family traditionally did these things, so I'm doing that. Now, certain things like factory farming, okay, maybe that doesn't actually qualify there. But at a bare there is a certain argument to be made for I'm following my traditions. You might say, look, I can't, you might be right, but I'm things are shaky enough in the universe I've got all these other things on. I'm trying to do my best. Maybe I'll get around to that later. Right? Now, I don't think you should just use these get out of jail free cards, but I'm offering them to you. And I think we should offer them in general. We should offer that spirit of acceptance, openness, non-judgment, because that's going to invite more people into the conversation. And if we're ever going to make progress on getting human beings to eat more wisely, which is a huge aspect of living, and has huge ramifications for the whole planet and all the beings living on this planet, then we really need to get more people into the conversation. And rather than just preaching to the choir and just having a one-way stream of, okay, this is what you should do, listen to us, we know everything, actually having conversations, having back and forth dialogues and getting it spread throughout the whole species. So that's the invitation here, is like all of this, you can just listen to it. None of it is threatening, right? Worst case scenario, you can say, either if you're eating say meat, etc., doing things with but maybe not getting factory farm meat, then you can say, this is the way basically my family's been living for ages, so I'm just following that, right? Or if you're doing more, you're eating fish, taken out in drag nets from the bottom of the ocean, killing off the fish stocks. You're getting eggs from hens who are having their beaks chopped off so they don't create the pecking order of their hierarchy because they're in too tight a space. They can't, the less dominant ones can't back away. So therefore they get these fights, and so the chickens have to have their beaks chopped off. This is true, by the way, as far as I understand it, in close confined chicken coops, industrial chicken and egg production. If you're getting those eggs, then okay, maybe your ancestors weren't involved in that, but you could say, look, I appreciate there's things I should look into, but look, I've got other priorities right now, and so, but I will look into that later when it lines up for me. And people might judge you for that, but at least you don't need to hide from the truth. You can be taking in information. Now, the taking, actually paying attention to your conscience and listening and and this goes for everything, ideas you don't want to hear. It could be about politics, could be about whatever, all kinds of things. Could be what someone is telling you about yourself, and the way who you really are, rather than your self-image. All of these things, it's always in your interest to pay attention and listen to everyone. You can put it through the filter of what you think. So someone tells you a story of what's going on. By listening to that doesn't mean you're endorsing their story. You listen to it, and if you're wise, you don't just reject it or just embrace it. No, you put it through the filter of your own mind, consciousness, and go, okay, what in this makes sense? And see, does that line up with what I know? And okay, and what about the things they're saying? Do they line up with each other? Are they internally cohesive? And well, that contradicts that a bit, doesn't it? And you said this. Why do you say that? You could follow it up and try to figure out what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. See if you can shoot stuff down. And you don't have a reply for that. Interesting. Okay. So, but you can either on your own or with another person, you can process what people have told you. And then whatever makes sense to you, congratulations, that's your new point of view. That's not someone else's point of view that you've been forced to take, unless you've been a coward, just done it, call it as it is. It's a bit rough to be a coward, but hey, we've all been there. I had the courage to pay attention to novel perspectives, things that I didn't understand or didn't agree with or wasn't aware of, and this part of it makes sense to my own inner knowing and my inner sense of what is real and right. So, and then you can incorporate that. Now, of course, there's a death involved, like the phoenix, the death of your past self, and then the new self born from the ashes of that. But hey, it's nice. Everyone wants to be young again, no? So, just keep swimming in the fountain of youth, guzzling the elixir of life, and it's called truth. Truth, consciousness, going with the flow. So that would be it, I think. The basic. And here's the thing, right? One more point on this before we move on to the details of diet. So if you repress the awareness of anything, but often it's things that make us uncomfortable. It's like your shadow, or I did this thing, or I do this thing regularly, and I don't really like that. That's not it clashes with my idea of my vision of myself, my self-image. Then that's your shadow, and you can hide from that. Like Carl Jung talked about this kind of stuff, and shadow work, integrating your shadow, bring it into part of your personality as self-development, being very healthy, very good for you and everyone else. But also, other ideas people give you about the world, which maybe you don't want to hear. So if you repress the awareness that there's maybe an issue in something you are doing or thinking or wanting or whatever, then it's kind of a deal with the devil you're making. Because you're thinking, all right, well, I'm just going to lie to myself. I'm going to block off my, I'm not just going to pretend something is true. Like, yeah, there's no issue here. Everything's fine. I don't have a sense that I'm conflicted or I'm doing something wrong. It's not just you're pretending that to others, you're pretending it to yourself. So you're actually sedating yourself, basically, but in a very targeted, precise way. And so, but you're leaving truth, and that's a very dangerous thing. And the thing is, it would kind of make sense on one level, even if it's a bit, maybe not so good for everyone else and maybe a bit selfish, if it was, actually helping you. But the crazy thing is, it's not even helping you. It's like the self you think you are being selfish for isn't even you. It's an idea. It's an illusion. Like your true self, is connected to everyone else. You're one branch on the tree of life, and anyone else that you hurt, you're actually hurting yourself. So the real way to be selfish is to be selfless. It's the circle's end being its beginning. The ring of power. Or, you know, at the end of all our journeying, we will return to the place where we started and know it for the first time. That poetry or whatever that is. But yeah, kind of so much to say that when you say, oh, I don't want to know about this, you know, stuff about, you know, sausages. I love sausages, so I'm just going to eat them. You, by lying to yourself like that, you are actually depriving yourself of something far more precious than sausages. And that is a connection to who you are, a connection to sober, intelligent awareness of what is happening in your life. So if you want to really be present in your life and actually live your life and not have, you know, automatic thought streams living your life for you while you are sedated in the back seat, and probably handcuffed and blindfolded, while they play, you know, Katy Perry on the radio, and you can't do anything about it. You're just having these nightmarish kind of, you know, fever dreams of like, you make me feel like I'm, you know, and you're just, of course, figuratively, proverbially handcuffed and blindfolded in the back seat of your life, you know. So beware of that. All right. So welcome to the land of truth. Let's explore what's going on and what might be going on. And I don't know. I'm just thinking, you know. And let me know what you think if you have ideas. By the way, if you like these podcasts, subscribe. Click the subscribe button. Probably the notification bell too, I guess, is necessary on YouTube. And yeah, share it if you know someone who will enjoy them. So yeah, all right. So we talked about health, ahimsa, or, you know, non-violence, trying to minimize suffering, maximize well-being for the animals we're sharing the earth with, and ecology. So that would be the basic aspects we're going to look at. Now we're going to go through, before we go through the pros and cons of the basic, you know, diets, more or less, a few kind of low-hanging fruit, obvious stuff. So factory farming. Factory farming, I would say, no, not good. Now, I want to be fair and balanced with this because, look, there's people who it's their livelihood. They make money from this. They're part of the factory farming system. And they might say, hey, in my country, you know, we don't have that much money. And, you know, this is a way for us to get more money. And, you know, look, sorry, that's just the way it is. But I would say, for one thing, that factory farming is not necessary for just from a financial perspective for humans. As far as I'm aware, like, yeah, you can squeeze huge profits, but to be able to get that much, to be able to do factory farming, you need a level of scale where you're already some big fish. You're not poor. You're a big company who's running it. If you're a worker in one of these big companies, okay, and then that's your livelihood, well, if they weren't there, you would be able to work at other farms, which were doing the right thing. So don't be attached to factory farming, be attached to farming. I like farming. It gives me my livelihood. Fair enough. But factory farming, you know, it does boost, food supply. But I think with the modern understanding of regenerative agriculture, I believe it's more productive. You can produce more food. Definitely better quality food, and definitely sustainably. A big problem with the industrial agriculture system is that we only have 60 more harvests around the world. The topsoils are being radically depleted because we're just taking and giving nothing back. Whereas regenerative agriculture, the idea is that you put more back into the soil than you take, which should really be, and in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. The Beatles, right? End of Abbey Road. Great song in the end. Well, it's a short song, but it makes the point. So I think, you know, we don't want to be parasites, right? Do you want to be a parasite? No, I think you want to give more to your friends than you take, give more to your, romantic partner than you take, um, give more to your children than you take, etc. So I think that's the point of view of love, and that's what we should be aiming for. Like even in practical things like food production, and when we're interacting with the soil, like we don't want to be parasites. I don't. Do you want to be a parasite? Let me know in the comments. Hey, I identify as a parasite. All right. So now, yeah. So factory farming, like not as sustainable as smaller scale, more traditionally based, and regenerative agriculture, which is kind of a synthesis of the traditional agriculture with modern science and what we understand about. There's all sorts of things we can do, and so it's not getting AI, like what Bill Gates is thinking of, like getting all this high tech centralized stuff, which will make a bunch of money for a bunch of billionaires, and take away the autonomy and financial independence of large groups of huge numbers of people, and having this corporate centralized vision of like, oh yeah, let the experts run the world, not that kind of idea of bringing modern science and technology to bear on agriculture, but a different vision, which could be well encapsulated with the documentary Kiss the Ground, which is talking about the regenerative agriculture movement, and how basically you can just let small farmers, every farmer, whatever, big farmers, small farmers, just give them this pretty simple knowledge. I'm sure there's a lot of detail to it as well, but at the basis, it's very simple. And yeah, which is you're trying to build up the soils. So you're adding organic content to the soils largely through planting trees on the ground, on the farm, having cows, etc. There are many ways, moving the cows around the grass. There are all kinds of ways of doing it, but there's a thing, Korean natural farming, which is largely about fermentation. Like they will take rice and kind of ferment it, and then they make like liquids out of that, and then they will use that as this organic fertilizer, and again boosts the microbial content of the soils, boosts productivity, increases the sustainability and the health of the soils, which is also good for rain and to fight off drought. Earth is, because it seems it might be dealing with some water shortages in this century if we're not careful. So already, I think, in some places. And so if we can improve our methods of agriculture, we can improve water retention and increase rainfall. So the more plants there are on the earth, then when the water, instead of evaporating just from the earth, if it goes up through the plants and evaporates through the plants, then it increases the moisture in the air. And so you increase more rainfall, which can have more plant growth. And so you get a virtuous cycle, compared to the opposite, desertification, which has happened from when we've been turning forests and kind of wilderness into just grassland to grow stuff, without understanding back then what we were doing to the water cycle, etc. Anyway, so point being, factory farming, I can respect that it was a great advancement in terms of like human achievement in a way that productivity, just the being able to do that, produce so much food and organize things on such a large scale, in a way that's impressive. But it's not necessary for us financially, economically, and food production wise. In fact, there's a fair argument that it's less efficient, especially when you take into the larger time scale of like, yeah, we're not planning to run this thing for 50 years, are we? Or 30 years until, because it won't be like a year before, the last harvest, everything's fine. No, people are going to start freaking out long before that. So probably be exponentially crazier. And so we don't want to get there. But there's that basic productivity financial standpoint. Factory farming seems like a loser there. Now, the big issue, but I say that just to connect with people who might feel like it's reasonable or needed. Of course, the real issue, the biggest issue is in terms of, it comes to these 3 points. We're going to analyze diets in terms of wealth. Factory farm food is nowhere near as good for you as naturally farmed food. Okay, we'll go into details in a moment. ahimsa and the ethics of it. Like these are conscious beings. They might not be thinking, and maybe they are thinking to some extent. We don't know. Just because they don't have language doesn't necessarily mean they don't have some form of intention and we don't even know, some sort of linguistic capacity which they just can't vocalize. I don't know. I would kind of doubt it, but I don't know. It's possible. I don't have evidence against it. But definitely they have consciousness. The cows, these chickens, they are present. I think once you go deep enough into yourself, say you can sit still for a little bit, then you will start to, you can connect, and hopefully you will, connect to the pure consciousness, and then go into that a little bit, maybe read a little bit about, the philosophy, how people have tried to understand this, and the picture becomes pretty clear pretty quick that all of life, the whole universe is alive. And so all these beings, just because they don't have thought, a mind, doesn't mean that they're not sentient. Sentience and thinking are two separate things. Watch episode 7, Awakening, if you want to know more about what I mean there. That consciousness and thinking are not the same. And in fact, for us, the highest state is not thinking. There's a level above that. Animals have consciousness, pure consciousness. We have this thinking where we can extrapolate into time and abstractions, but we can get lost in them also. You may have experienced this. I'm sure you have. And then we can go above it through spirituality, quote unquote, or non-duality, or mindfulness, awakening, etc. But so cows, all these beings which are in these factories, seeing their cows get slaughtered. There's ways to do it where they I believe they try to minimize the suffering as much as they can while making maximum profit. But so they might be out of sight, but they can smell things, they can probably feel the vibrations and sixth sense sort of stuff. And sometimes I believe they're just right in front of each other getting whacked, getting killed, and they can see it. And we go, oh, but they're just like machines, so it doesn't matter. They're not really there. So what does it matter? Let's make money. But so that's a awful lot of suffering, and it's absolutely unnecessary. There are far more humane ways to kill animals if we're going to eat them. So we'll get into that after. On the third, and also for the workers there, I don't think that's good for the humans even involved in that, those kind of operations. The third aspect, so ecology, these are extremely ecologically damaging. These huge, all the feces and urine that runs off in smaller operations, it's all getting sequestered here and there in the soil, it's balanced. You put them all together, then you've got this huge imbalance of all this kind of, intense, product, which is going, they have whole lakes. Some of these pig farms have huge lakes, stinking, enormous dark lakes of feces and urine. And as far as I understand it, that's not so good for the earth. Whereas if it was separate, then the earth can work with it. Things can process it. Microbes can process it, or insects and whatever can eat. It all gets turned into earth again. And the energy and the water use is off the charts. Like we're taking our shower. It's like, yeah, limit your shower time to save water. It's like we can all do that. And if the factory farms, increase their water consumption by like 0.01%, it undoes everything we just did. Like it's such a colossal use of water there. So that was one thing that I think the documentary Cowspiracy did a fair point of pointing out, is like the amount of I think energy and water that these huge operations use. I think other things they got wrong, as far as I understand it, like the effect of bovines, like cows, etc., on climate change and stuff like this. Some things aren't totally legit, I think, there. But hey, nothing's going to be perfect, right? But kudos to them for starting the conversation, putting so much work into it, and I think they got a bunch of things right there, and definitely they're coming from the right place, the right spirit, which is trying to improve and give to the earth and give to all of us, being honest, but also being as respectful as possible. So yeah, now, all right. So health of like factory farming, like the eggs you get from those chickens, they're like, this pathetic yellow. If you get chickens who are running around on, in the grass eating bugs and from, the cow poo, and they're just like eating bugs out of that, and they're eating bugs out of like the grass and, whatever, their yolks are like orange, right? So what's going on there? And they taste far more delicious, and they make you feel much better. And they've studied them, and lo and behold, there's far more healthy compounds in there, like whatever it is, like vitamins, minerals, healthy fats, protein, whatever. Across the board, everything's better. Same thing with beef. Beef, which is from factory farms, and they're eating, they're not eating grass, right? They're feeding them corn and grain and stuff. As far as I understand it, those cows, they're not as healthy, the cows themselves, but then, and often they have a lot of, stomach problems, and so they need to give them, what do you call it, antibiotics and all kinds of crazy gear, and then you're getting that when you're eating them to some extent. You're getting exposed to these things, and but also just the quality of the meat, the taste of it, the look of it, but also all the same thing with eggs, right? As far as I understand it, there's more minerals, more nutrition in pasture raised beef rather than from factory farms, and it just goes on. And on a more esoteric level, I think there is something to be said for, the vibrations of these animals who are like unhappy, and that, they might not quite realize why, just like maybe we're already stressed in modern society, we might not realize why. And then, like you kind of think about it, or you get exposed to a book or a podcast where someone's kind of putting it in perspective. You go, oh yeah, we're kind of like, we're not really living in alignment with the way our ancestors lived. And we're kind of missing a lot, human connection. We're all running around, and it seems like the meaning has been stripped from life. We've lost our sense of, purpose, and it's all just encouraging consumption and whatever. In the same way, you might have that feeling of angst, but not quite be able to put your finger on it. I think cows and all these animals, they're surely aware or feeling the difference from, being roaming in nature on these green paddocks with their buddies, and so, and then when the animals are being killed or are being, whatever, or the humans who are interacting with them there are in that kind of hellhole and probably aren't feeling so good themselves, compared to a farmer who's walking around their little farm and, hey cows, even if it's not such a nice farmer, if they're in this beautiful paddock, it's going to be harder for them to be in a low vibrational state. They're probably going to be more calm and happy. The cows are going to pick up on that also, be treated better. But so all of these, there's an argument that is getting into your food, the vibrations of what the animal has experienced. And I think it makes sense. And I think, probably physicists would probably go, yeah, that makes sense. Like, that there's a certain memory to matter, like, the vibrational, like, I think water has shown, you can put vibrations through it and it kind of shows some sort of memory of what it was. And also, apparently, now this is something where I've just heard about kind of recently-ish and been like, I haven't looked into it, but apparently emotions, water can, if you're expressing like love or like anger at water, it forms different structures, crystals, which goes to that point of that everything is conscious. And potentially there's consciousness in water, which is kind of interacting with your emotions and your intention. But that's another story. And, I don't know much about that, but hey, our purposes, factory farming, you're eating a big steak of suffering potentially, and who knows, if you stop doing that, maybe try and eat pasture raised meat for a month and see if it makes you feel different. So that'd be factory farming, right? I think, and that's one thing where vegans are, meat eater. Some vegans, and vegetarians or whatever will get combative against people who eat meat, etc. I think, look, low hanging fruit. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to unite, not divide each other, right? If we're going to do anything, we need to be together. So we need to unite and focus on, look, let's get rid of factory farms. No, we don't want to hang and, draw and quarter like the people who work there and own them or whatever. We don't want to impoverish them. Let's find some way to help it transition into regenerative agriculture. And everyone wins, We're all on one big team, right? And so that could be through government intervention, but in general, I'm more of a libertarian, if I have to label myself, although that's often a misunderstood term. I think people probably think I mean something different when I say that. Um, you mean like a crazy person? Yes, exactly. Um, but probably better would be voting with our dollars, right? We become more aware, we spread awareness about this through conversations, and people will start to just buy other stuff. And then the factory farming, system will just naturally go, oh, if we want to make money, we need to do the other thing. All right, let's take 20% of our property and operations and turn them into regenerative. Just 20%. Let's just dip our toes. And then soon enough, that's the majority of it's growing. They've got so much demand for that. All right, let's make 30% of our operation regenerative. You can see how that would naturally just supply and demand transition. They want to make money. If we only give them money for the things that align with, these principles we're talking about, then, it's inevitable, right? So rather than just, complaining and fighting each other, let's unite and try to spread the message and sound happy, hopeful. Don't sound like a bummer. People want to ignore you. Go, hey, this is cool. This is going to happen if we just kind of, have a good vibe and, stick together and kind of try to figure this out together. All right, so no factory farming, I would say. Now, huge industrial fishing is a similar kettle of fish. So the oceans are predicted to be empty of fish in like a few decades, or there's all these really dire predictions. And you never know. You've got to take that with a pinch of sea salt, because the media's due to the rise of the internet and free content. Traditional legacy media is in free fall in terms of their bottom line, and so are increasingly, it seems, turning to hysteria and playing upon more base animal emotions like fear, disgust, anger, that kind of thing, to get people's attention, and so make money through advertising, and also selling out to advertisers themselves, and printing stories which they might kind of suspect aren't quite true because, well, that's good for the advertisers. So this seems to be happening. So you never quite know. You need to be a bit diligent with some of the stories you hear in the newspaper, like alarmism. Nonetheless, it seems pretty well established that the oceans are in a terrible shape. From chemical fertilizers, a lot of, say, the Great Barrier Reef, I believe, is in a terrible state off the northeast coast of Australia, because largely, I think, of chemical fertilizers being run off through the farms. Again, if there was regenerative agriculture, there wouldn't be that chemical fertilizer, and also the land, if it had more, even if you kept the chemical fertilizers, if you just got more trees on the land, it would retain more water and there'd be less runoff. So and better for the soil, less erosion for the soil too. So, so that's one problem: acidification of the oceans, I believe it is, from chemical fertilizers. There's also trash, just people dumping enormous amounts of trash into the oceans, and this is something where we have a real obligation in the developed, more educated world. Look, no one wants to. It's obviously not a good thing to be thinking oh, you're better than others and trying to push them down and being like some sort of egotistical maniac. However, it is true that when people are in poverty, they have less time for education and less interest because they're focused on dealing with themselves and trying to take care of their lives, and probably dealing with a bunch of trauma and resentment and anger caused by people who have been often oppressing them. People in free, fair countries tend to, not be in dire poverty, with the exception of, say, addiction and mental health issues. And in general, a lot of the people, there's a huge number of people in the world who are living in countries where there's rampant corruption, and they're doing their best to get by, but that doesn't leave a lot of space for education and awareness of ecological issues. So people in India, I was on a train, had some rubbish. I was like, I couldn't see a bin. I was like, oh, I said to someone, excuse me, do you know where there's a bin? And I kind of showed him the thing I had in my hand. And he's like, oh yeah, nods and takes it from my hand. He goes over to the window and opens the window. He's about to throw it out the window. I was like, no, no, no. And he looks at me like utterly confused. Like, what's wrong with you? I just offered to take care of this. And then I took it back from him. No, no, I don't want to do that. And he just looked kind of like, kind of baffled. And there's rubbish all over the place there. It's a beautiful country, but there's a lot of rubbish in many, many places. And I think it's just part of the culture when people are forced into a lower level of, more based on survival and day by day, they're less aware of this stuff. When they have that taken care of, the mind, busy as it is, goes, all right, what's next? Oh, well, maybe life would be better for me and my children if there was a bit less air pollution or a bit less of this rubbish around. Interesting. And we start to expand our selfishness or problem solving, you could call it, into wider realms, including ecology. So we in the wealthier world, educated world, need to, I think, really get our move on, and I guess that's happening already. But because there's a lot of these, like in Asia, there's an enormous amount of trash that's going to the oceans, and I guess they're becoming, wealthier. So hopefully that will, balance that out a little bit. But anyway, so there's plastic going to the ocean. You have Boyan Slat, and the ocean cleanup project or whatever, who are developing some technology to clean up the plastic, and that seems to be promising. Last I checked, look it up. That's really interesting stuff. Kind of like have some floating thing which would kind of pushes the plastic together, and then a ship can go and pick it all up when it's dense enough and all together. But that's not good. There's fish who are eating plastic, and then bigger fish are eating them, and then we're eating them, and so we're eating plastic, right? You have heavy metals in the ocean, right? Like mercury and whatever, and things that they're really bad for us. And we're eating them, and the big fish that we often eat, they've eaten a lot of smaller fish, so there's a buildup of these toxins. There's radiation from, I don't know how much that is, but I believe from Fukushima there's still radiation in the ocean. Maybe, I'm not sure. Anyway, but probably the biggest thing, the thing we need to focus on is commercial fishing fleets, which are just going into international waters and just dredging the whole ocean just with these huge drag nets that pick up everything. And a bunch of the things there they don't even want. They just kill them or throw them back in the ocean, and they're dying off. And then just so they can get whatever they wanted. So one thing we could say is you're not allowed to do that, or make it really public awareness campaigns where, look, this is a stamp thing saying that you don't participate in that. And we kind of boycott people who don't do it. And we give our money to people who do this, who do the right thing. So that'd be a free market solution, or maybe we could use government solutions, given that, look, it's a desperate situation. Something needs to be done. So when you have all, say a certain level of, fish or creature in the ocean gets killed off, then the animals, say the fish or whatever, let's just say fish for the purpose of this, the bigger fish who eat them now don't have enough food. And so they die off. And then the ones that are eating them die off, right? Yes, or is that, and then I think even if we take a lot of the big fish, then I think there's another kind of vicious cycle there where the things that they were eating get out of control, and then they start overeating their food, and so then they run out of food and they die off, and so I think I might be messing that up, but basically you have these kind of chain reactions where and so I think apart from the fact that a lot of the fish in the ocean these days is not very healthy, unfortunately, you need to be pretty careful. Apart from that, and farmed fish farms in general, I believe, like I don't know, but from what I've heard, it's not very healthy. Like there's a lot of problems with water flow and hygiene and stuff. But maybe there's ways to do it that can be good, hopefully. But yes, so stopping the I think fishing ideally should be maybe a smaller scale thing where we say, look, we're going to limit the amount of fish you can take, but we're going to be able to do this indefinitely. You know, it's sustainable. And you can charge higher prices because there's less of the stuff. But hey, here are some limits. So you're going to make the same amount of money, but it's just that we would, as the consumers, if we were willing to pay more for fish, then that would be an option. Of course, some people, they're like in poverty, and that's something we're going to talk about in a bit, like people who are in a survival situation, then they won't want to participate in that. But it's one, people who have the means to say, pay more for fish or not eat fish. That is one, we could try to have that as one component of a strategy where we try to move away from these huge just trolling commercial fishing fleets. And also when they're going, they're destroying more than just, I think, the creatures down there, the animals. They're also the floor of the ocean. They're leaving deserts, I believe, like tearing up, like sometimes I think like plants and etc. down there. Could be wrong about that. Of course, you also have like Japan's scientific whaling fleet and that kind of thing, which is as what the Chasers War and everything said, which is hilarious but dark. This is some great Australian comedy show. Some skit where there's some guy purportedly a scientist from the fleet saying, we have, according to our results, our scientific research, we have decided that this whale, that type of whale, and this whale are all equally delicious. Okay, so this is our scientific work. So yeah, I'd say that's obviously, I would say not a good thing. We'll talk about that as well, given whales are so intelligent after. But okay, so mainstream fishing, factory farming. I think these are things we could agree need to be changed. Monoculture and industrial farming. So there's something I mentioned in the Mother Nature episode, like about just realigning ourselves with nature to be sustainable and decent and not a parasite. But yeah, monoculture, where you're just growing one type of food on huge areas of land, that's not natural and it's not good for the earth. So the food we grow there, it's going to be less healthy for us because the soils suffer under monoculture. Also, monoculture, this is something that's relevant for vegans, and part of, it's a confusing debate, but something to be, vegans and vegetarians, something that everyone needs to be aware of is, all the food we eat, everything has a cost in terms of life. The death is part of all food, and so monoculture, it requires clearing a lot of land that can't be used by other animals. In Brazil, they're clearing the rainforest. If it's already done, 200 years ago, then we might think, all right, hey, it's live and let live it, or let that go. It's the past. We have these huge fields now. That's where let's live in the present. Okay, fair enough, fine. Still, there's going to be, when you're harvesting that, the combine harvesters on industrial large-scale agriculture, going through, they kill countless numbers of ground-nesting birds and small mammals and insects. And so you might say, oh yeah, but they're not as big as a cow. So it's like they're not really as important. Like a cow is more conscious. So killing that is worth, but the thing, it's a far greater number of lives that are being taken. So there's something we'll mention a bit later, but, monoculture does have this, in terms of the ethical side of ahimsa, a lot of damage. Whereas if you have smaller scale operations, or if you're just using different, growing different crops, I suppose potentially you'd still be killing these animals, but it would be better for the earth anyway, and so ecologically, and potentially, you could have people who are paying more attention. Usually smaller scale people need to pay more attention to what they've got, whereas at a larger scale, less to lose if you mess. I guess you don't need to pay as close attention to each acre. But all right. So monoculture and industrial farming, all the chemical pesticides, which are terrible for the insect population and the birds, and there's all kinds of problems. The bees, which are required to pollinate a third of our food. There's all these problems and it's not sustainable. So that's something. So we have factory farming, large-scale industrial fishing and monoculture and large-scale industrial agriculture. I think these really, like, we don't have much of a choice here. We need to, as a group, as humans, not pointing the finger, but but speaking clearly and saying this is what we need to do. We need to find a way to change this, and we can do it in a way where everyone benefits. Maybe some people won't be making as huge profits, like say factory farming. The main reason it's done is there's enormous profits, and all of these systems, it's all about money. That's the main reason. That's the only reason. And so put yourself in the shoes of, you're the scion of some, family who's been wealthy for generations. Your family, so you're the inheritor of this, and you're being raised by them. And how do you think you're being educated? How do you think you're being taught to think? And how do you think you think? You probably think the way they think, and they think the way their parents thought, and you're probably very proud of this tradition. And maybe your family owns a bunch of investment funds that control many, many major corporations, and a lot of the people who really have their fingers on the dials and the controls of these systems, and it's not just a small group of people. I think a small group of people have an enormous influence over it and could change the whole system if they wanted. A very small group of people, maybe 1,000 people, could change the system if they wanted. But there are many, many other people in the system. It's like the thing, the 1% of the world has 90% of the resources or something, but then 1% of the 1% has 90% of those resources, and 1% of that has so it's like this pyramid structure, like a fractal that keeps going. So, but the people who are however loosely we define them, the people who have the enormous influence over these systems, I think they really like the money and what it allows them, and it's everything they've known. Their life is based upon, the social circles they're involved in, the activities they get up to, what they do. And so I think we need to be conscious and compassionate about, that's a big shift. And for people to sacrifice that, like, how much have you sacrificed? I find it hard to sacrifice things. So I can, and it's all kind of relative. So, in terms of a very poor person sacrificing $1 is maybe the same amount of willpower required as a richer person sacrificing $100 or $1,000 or $1 million. So, but there's things that I find very hard to do, even though I know I should. And so I can empathize that probably there's at least a minority of the people at the very top of this system who understand what should happen, but find it difficult to bring themselves to do it because they like what's the way it's been. They like aspects of the way it is. And then there's going to be another percentage who are totally, keen to do it and trying their best, but, in the elite, and then there'll be another large chunk who just aren't interested yet, And so it's kind of, we need to be aware of this. And anyway, all right. And yeah, so another final thing is, for this kind of things I think we can all agree on, right? So we've got factory farming, industrial fishing, monoculture, industrial agriculture. The final thing is being healthy ourselves and not wasting, waste not, want not, So being frugal and healthy with food. So don't eat more than you need, both because that's lightening the burden on Mother Nature and the system. Yes, there's less money going to the system if you eat less, or potentially if because if you're wasting food, then okay, just buy a bit less of it and eat it all, and or even if you're eating all the food you have, but maybe you're a bit overweight. And I'm not fat shaming, I don't really like that term. I think sometimes people are being vindictive, and then that is shaming, and but they're being malicious and just trying to hurt people, and that I don't support that. But then there's other times when people are trying to help people. So we need to be nuanced here and say people can try to help people and say, hey, I think, look, I want you to be around for a long time, and you're kind of putting on a lot of weight. You're my whatever, you're my uncle or whatever. I care about you. Let's go jogging together and maybe change your diet. It can come from a place of love, and we need to. If we don't admit that, hey, you're causing more harm than good. We need to be nuanced and to notice intentions. But so, say someone, but the idea is that if you're unhealthy, you're eating too much food. By eating less, you're putting less of a burden on Mother Nature, and the system, and the money that you would be putting to that system, you can use that for other things, put it elsewhere in the economy where it'll be good, or save it, or invest it in something, or use it to help yourself grow and be happier in some other way, help other people. So there's that being less, putting less pressure on the planet, and we have 60 harvests left or whatever. So if we with the conventional industrial agricultural system, so it's a small thing, but if a lot of people did that, okay, that might help. A lot of food is wasted anyway, but the companies would have to respond and go, okay, we've got less demand for this. Let's maybe produce a little bit less. Maybe we can let that field just recover this year. We're not going to plant it, And then also for yourself, we need people to be healthy, because a healthy body allows a healthy mind, and healthy mind allows healthy actions. Healthy actions allow a healthy planet. So if we want to be neurons in the Gaian brain, if we want to be messengers conveying information back and forth, accurate, inaccurate, doing our best to, figure out what's real and what's right, then we really need to be as healthy as we can. And so that's another imperative, I think. Be healthy and try to live lightly on the earth. Try not to waste, resources, food, and many other resources as well. So that'd be a fourth thing I think we could all agree on, I would hope. Now, let's see, into the pros and cons of different ways of eating, diets, right? So we're going to talk about veganism, vegetarianism, pescatarianism, omnivorianism, being an omnivore. Yes, those. Okay, so vegan. All right, so the pros, you're probably going to eat, in terms of health, you're going to eat a lot more. Look, if you do it right, if you're not just eating chips and pizza, cheeseless pizza, let's say you're not just eating chips and, fried vegetables in, canola oil, which is not good for you as far as I understand it, not good for your heart and many other things, inflammation causing, cancer causing. But if you're doing it right, like you're eating a lot of fresh food, ideally organic food, you're eating, with veganism, you're going to get really bored probably unless you find ways to get creative. And so you're probably going to get more diversity of foods just because you don't want to be eating the same thing every day. I think, say what you want about meat, but almost everyone agrees that meat is incredibly delicious. And so you can have meat and potatoes and some vegetables, and you're probably going to be satisfied. You could probably eat that every day and be pretty happy. If you're eating the same salad every day, probably not going to be happy. So one thing veganism can do is allow you to get a much richer diversity of foods. It can require you, if you're diligent, go, I need to be careful to make sure I'm healthy. So you might learn a lot about health. That could be a good thing. So that's it. Diversity of foods, maybe more awareness of foods, and just shaking up your diet a bit. It could be a bit of a detox, maybe allowing your body to. Often people say they feel better at first, at least when they're going vegan, and potentially, that is this. There's some sort of benefit there. Now, so that's health, and it depends. Like, if you're eating a lot of bread, then maybe that's not so good for your health. It's basically sugar. So you want to be aware of sugar and seed oils and overly processed stuff. But if you're doing it fairly intelligently, you're taking B12 supplements. You're being aware of phytic acid, so you're being careful that to make sure you're calculating your and just judging by your feeling like that you're getting enough nutrition. Then that should be fine. That's health. Now, the ahimsa side of veganism, as mentioned before, yes, you're not participating and funding the killing of animals, like cows, chickens, pigs, etc. So on one level, hey, that's cool, I guess. You're avoiding the death of these animals. Now, you are, however, therefore going to eat more grains, probably, and other like vegetables and fruits and stuff. And I suppose if you avoided grains, it might be pretty all right there, because grains is the real issue where monoculture with grains, it causes far more death than meat eating with like one cow. One cow can feed a person for like a year or 6 months or something, a very long time, right? Whereas to feed someone for that long with grain, it's going to be like what, I don't know, thousands, millions of deaths of little creatures, you know. And we say, well, yeah, but they're less conscious, so you know they don't matter as much. But are we qualified to make that calculation? You know, is not all life equal? It's consciousness here and there. Um, now, I yeah, okay. So there's that. And also, when you're vegan, say the whole world went vegan and we stopped eating animals. Okay, so money doesn't grow on trees. So um, the in order to house and feed and water these animals, where would that money come from? We would need to agree or tax people or to fund that. And then would we have the same huge numbers of animals on the land? Or would we just set them free and, you know, let them wander around and, you know, I guess maybe let them wander around Siberia and, you know, build up the soils by pooping everywhere? I don't know. Or pigs, you know, pigs go wild and they can be very dangerous for the local wildlife. They can be a pest in Australia, you know, it can be really dangerous and, you know, harmful for other creatures, etc. So there's that to be thought of. And so if we weren't eating these animals, it seems pretty much inevitable, as far as I can tell, that their population would decrease a lot. Either we would cull them, or probably if we were all turning vegan, we would let them live out their lives. So maybe cows, I think, can live what, like 12 years, 13 years, or something like this. I'm not sure, but so we let them live, and then they die, and you know, that's it. And then the population is much smaller, so you'd have a far smaller. Imagine you're a cow soul and you're trying to incarnate as a cow. There'd just be less opportunities for life. And so I think, you know, I don't know the answer here, but it seems like if you can eat ethically raised beef, right? So beef which is coming from from pasture, you know, the animals are kind of wandering around with their friends and their social, you know, connecting socially with the other cows, and then they're eating the grass, and then everything's sunshine and rainbows, but then one day, you know, one of them's taken off and, you know, gets a bullet to the head quickly without them realizing. If it's done in some way where it's as humane as possible, with the minimum suffering possible, and then that animal is used to feed people and give life to humans, you know. And humans can do a lot of wonderful things as far as all the bad stuff. So that's not like a pointless enterprise sustaining humans, you know. And so that that life, they can have that life, and many by eating. If humans are eating, say we could transition away from factory farming and just have cows which are on the land in the more traditional way, and some of the people were vegetarian, some people were vegan, and some people are omnivores and they're eating the cows, then this allows that cow population to still live and have a place in the world and keep, you know, experiencing and expressing themselves there in whatever way a cow does. And so it might, in a way, almost be a hubristic human thing to think we're going to save you cows by removing you from the animal kingdom, basically shrinking your presence. You know, maybe, like, I'm sure people have a visceral reaction of like, oh, you know, but we're killing them. But we're also death and life going to come together, you know, and we're also allowing them the opportunity for life, and it seems like they wouldn't have that in the absence of the demand and the money which supports them, because people want to eat their bodies. Now, I will mention something which, you know, from my point of view, I don't think, like, when a cow gets killed, I don't think the cow, who the cow really is, dies. I think the whole universe is consciousness. So I understand this is just my point of view, many other people's point of views as well, and throughout history. And I think, you know, logically, there's a good case for this point of view. as I made in episode 7, Awakening, tried to make. But from my point of view, for what it's worth, I think when an animal gets killed, it's a transition. That conscious, I don't know how it works. It's mysterious, but that soul or that consciousness, that space of, the internal space of here I am, and, like the audience of one, which is looking out through the eyes, kind of in the head, so to speak, that first person point of view that a cow can have. And you look at a cow and you see there's someone looking back at you, right? Whoever that is, I think that is consciousness, and it's got nowhere to go. It is the universe. So however it works, whether it's reincarnating as another cow, it's like a soul and it's developing on its own journey, or whether it's just the universal consciousness, the universal mind, just the universe experiencing itself inside out. And so, the body is gone, and just it's like a wave, it goes back to the ocean, and then it can form a new wave. From my point of view, if a cow is humanely slaughtered, that it's not like we have, I think it's a different thing to what some people might think if they're coming from the point of view of materialist science, where they're thinking everything is an illusion, the soul is not real, love's not real, there's no life after death, and that's it, that's a wrap. And so that's something to keep in mind. I think there's a lot of reason to believe in this very hopeful perspective, but I think it just happens to be true that we are consciousness at our core, and every being is consciousness, and that death, when we die, when any other being dies, it's not the end. We're going back to where we came from, and it's like that kind of thing. This is a little aside, but I used to think like, wow, how amazing. It's so unlikely that I would be born, like that, of all the sperms, like that were racing for the egg, and then I happen to be the one I am, happens to get, fertilize the egg and turn into me. And then you think, like, not to go into too much detail, but like if one's parents had, different plans, and, they weren't doing certain things on that day, or they're doing other things, or, someone was late giving them coffee in the cafe, so they missed a taxi, and so something changed and there's a different conversation, and so someone didn't take a flight, or this happened, and just changed, butterfly effect, things changed. There's so many little, then I wouldn't have even been able to win the race of 1 million sperm. It would just be like, the race didn't happen. Just got recycled, I wasn't part of it. And if you think about that, that's just one little thing that could happen. Like, 24 hours earlier could derail that event, those plans. And it goes back thousands of years, millions of years, all the events that were required to set up that moment. So I just was staggered, like, oh my God, how incredibly unlikely. It's almost like impossibly unlikely that I would be born. What are the odds, And then that's a very, I think, important insight or mind set to kind of understand and feel. But then what's even crazier is coming one step further and realizing, actually, I am the only one who could have been born, because we are all the universe, and there is only one who can ever live a life, and it is the one. And I know it as the one through Jamie, and I call it Jamie, and it feels like Jamie. And it's not the same as Joel Pianto. Shout out to Joel Pianto, good friend of mine back in the day in Australia. Haven't seen him for yonks, but point being, we're not the same person, But I think there is a point deep down where we are the same. It's just like, our memory is so short that part of it seems, the mystery, I don't know, full disclosure, I don't understand, but it seems like part of being a human is and being any animal, be it a cow or a bee or whatever, is your memory is restricted and you're channeled into this form, and this is who you are. But I think at the end, it's like what Ramdas said, death is like taking off a very tight shoe, and it's not what we think. It's a transition, And so if that is true, then that puts a whole other the spin on the ethical ahimsa dimension of eating animals. So veganism, okay. We talked about health. The things with health, I should mention with veganism, it is quite easy to be unhealthy as a vegan. You need to be careful. You need to make sure, if you're doing it, I think you need to be on point and make sure you're eating enough protein, you're eating nuts or I don't know, what can you get protein? I mean, tofu, but as far as I understand it, tofu and soy aren't actually very healthy for you. I could be wrong. It's quite controversial, but from what I can figure out, that's the sense I've gained. Um, but like maybe fermenting them, it might be okay. But there's like estrogen analogs and things, and certain things that seem like maybe not the best for you. Um, but uh, but yeah, whatever you can get protein through being a vegan, right? Whichever ways you can do it. And fats and enough of these vitamins, etc. But it's doable, definitely doable. I think there's probably a very, very small percentage of people who can't do it, just genetically. Probably, I would imagine a small percentage, but I think almost everyone can do it, and probably most people can do it pretty easily. But they just need to pay a little bit of attention and invest a bit of time figuring out, okay, what do I need? What does the body need? And where can you get it? And what do I like eating? And how can I, find the common ground between what I need and what meals can give it to me that I will eat? And so you can do that, But if you don't do that, and you're eating fast food and, I think and just, potatoes and just maybe certain foods which too much and it's not giving you a balanced diet, then I think in a way, unfortunately, although perhaps you're coming from the right place, it's not actually so virtuous, because we need you to be healthy. We need you all hands on deck, I think, at this point in history. So like and for yourself, for your own happiness, your friends want you to be happy, your family want you to be happy, and I think you want to make them happy. So but that's probably not, I think most vegans probably are healthy, but I don't know the numbers, but yes, but so you need to pay attention though. Okay, that'll be the lesson. Now, ecologically, yes, veganism, well, the monoculture, a lot of vegans, you need to be aware of the monoculture issue. If you want to be vegan, then that doesn't mean that's the end of the story. It's like, okay, I think you also need to be aware of, good, you're not part of factory farming and industrial fishing, but there's also the monoculture issue and industrial farming. So that's something to be aware of. And it can be tricky where you're going to have to pay more money basically to, I guess, get grains which are, not from that system. And also, I guess, is there any other ecological issues with veganism? I would say that's the main one. Yeah, potentially, again, like actually having cows on the land in the traditional way, that's actually healthy for the land. So if everyone went vegan, then maybe that would be a problem. But I think probably what's going to happen, hopefully, is a bunch of people will be vegan, a bunch of people will be vegetarian, a bunch of people will be omnivores, and we can find a way to make it all work. And so I think, but yeah. So if you've never been vegan, it's something, it'd be interesting, and I'd recommend trying it. But for me, it's not something I felt drawn to continuing. Not because it was too hard or something. No, it was great. I loved it. But eventually, at a point, I came to the decision originally for these three reasons: health, ethics or ahimsa, and ecology. They were the three reasons I went vegan, because I thought, oh yes, I should mention this, right? I thought meat, it's not actually that healthy. Turns out that's not true, as far as I understand. I'll go into that in a moment. Ahimsa, or minimizing suffering, wasn't aware of, say, what a lot of, the production of grains, etc., involves, and other, even growing, cabbages and stuff. You're killing all the pests, that are trying to eat them. You kill them. There's a lot of death involved in all these foods. Whereas a cow, I guess, you're not really killing pests from a cow, really. They swat away the flies with their tail, and they eat the grass. Maybe the cows are eating some bugs, but hey, that's on them. But yes, so, and then ecologically, one of the things I think in Cowspiracy they said was that, yeah, it's the animal agriculture uses so much water and so much land, and and it does, but a lot of that's factory farming, the water, and actually the best way, it seems like the best, most efficient use of water, just society-wide, is if we have regenerative agriculture on small farms, big farms, whatever, it's scalable. Um, uh, then, and again, look at Kiss the Ground, that documentary, $1, you can watch it, or it's on Netflix for free, I think. Really good documentary. Woody Harrelson's narrating it, good old Woody. Um, um, and so uh, water management through that is very is optimized, it seems. So that doesn't seem to hold water. Haha, wink, wink. Energy use, yeah, I think a lot of that is factory farming, and where they say like transportation of moving foods around. But I think that's it's a problem in general with industrialized agriculture. If we could have smaller farms, and a lot of that would also be, I think, gets into other topics, but transforming away from oligarchy toward a more free, economically free society based lower taxes, less regulation. Perhaps it would be easier for people working for farms to go save up for 10 years and then break off and start their own farm, But we could talk about that in another episode. But the crucial thing Cowspiracy talked about was climate change, and that the basically the emissions from cows being the number one greenhouse gas contributor above transportation. So methane and I think CO2, carbon dioxide from cows. And I think there is something to, they do release certain gases. And however, as far as I understand it, from looking into it further, it really does seem that it's actually the opposite. If cows and bovines, etc., chickens, or let's just say cows, if they're on pasture and they're cycled around, so they're not eating too much of this grass, they eat this grass and they move on, their feces is going into the earth all around, so that's a natural fertilizer, stimulating microbial and, insect activity. Chickens can go around eating, there, and, that's enhancing the soil, etc. And this actually builds up the soils, and the farmers say, hey, I've been doing this for 10 years. My soils have, they're thicker than they were and noticeably darker, and there's people that show pictures of this online if you look into this yourself, But there's a guy, Heart and Soil. Heart, Australian, Heart and Soil, instead of soul, Heart and Soil, is a website and I think a company that make supplements based on like organ meats and this kind of thing. But they're run by or affiliated with this doctor who's talked about the carnivore diet and just eating meat. But apart from that issue, he talks a lot about regenerative agriculture and how bovines can actually heal the earth. And they've been here for a long time, and they weren't doing damage. They're enhancing the biodiversity and the health of the soils, and that's what they have been doing again in places where this has been implemented. And so you've got people who are, how are they doing this? Where are they getting the money for these operations? Meat. They sell the cows, they kill the cows after, and the soils have been rejuvenated and healed. And so you might say, oh, but that cow, we took that cow's life. But yes, but that cow gave life to all these fields, which are now enriched because of its living there. And if we weren't eating it, it would never have been there, and so it would have no legacy in the grass, The circle of grass. I mean, life. Yeah. All right. So now, I think that's, yeah, okay. So that's veganism saying, climate change, we need to stop eating cows. I don't think that's true. Actually, you need to differentiate between factory farming, which is not doing any good, causing a lot of problems, and regenerative agriculture, where you've got a lot of plants growing on the land and you've got all kinds of stuff in the mix, like permaculture, you're mixing all kinds of stuff and there's synergies. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Cows, chickens, vegetables, grains, all this stuff growing together and being raised together. So, all right. Now, vegetarianism would be, okay, you're eating animal products also. So you're eating dairy, or you allow yourself to eat dairy, to eat eggs, um, and honey, right? So I think honey, like a lot of, the bees, I won't go into too much detail there, but I think we want to make sure the bees are happy and healthy because we really depend on them. I think a lot of beekeeping, they use, chemicals and certain things which maybe aren't the best. But a lot of the problems with the bees, as I understand it, have been pesticides being used on like neighboring farms, etc., like neonics especially, which were banned in the European Union, at least for a while, because it seemed like they were disorienting bees and causing colony collapse. There's that, and also electromagnetic pollution, like all these EMFs from me doing a podcast and everyone using phones and electricity everywhere, potentially is disorienting the bees, because it's just like, the radio, they used to have a walkie-talkie with the hive of what's going on. This is my understanding of it. It might be wrong, but that they used to have this walkie-talkie talking to the hive. What's up, yo? And then now it's just like flooded with all these, Katy Perry bangers and, etc. And just, all the madness of all of our communications, and so disorienting the bees. So, but in terms of eating honey, I mean, I think again, if those bees wouldn't be there, we shouldn't maybe go and just take it from wild, just go pillage wild honey. If it's done sustainably and you're encouraging them, you're giving more than you're taking, then maybe that's cool. But maybe you're planting a lot of flowers and bushes that they love and are good for bees, and you're helping preserve them. And okay, great. Maybe you can do that. Have a forest where, which is another type of agriculture, like forestry, where you have basically a forest, and a bunch of the trees or things in there would be things that we can extract food and whatever benefit from. And so again, that's another model we can use. But so if you're doing that kind of beekeeping, sure. But I think otherwise, let them be. Let them be. That was an accidental pun. All right. Now, but if it's in kind of our own bees, where we're having keeping bees on small farms or big farms, I see no problem with that, so long as, they're not keeping the honey, but again, they're not going to be there. Don't stop laughing. They're not going to be there if we stop these practices, right? So, okay, it seems like it's good for us, good for them. They get to live, so why not, and yeah, so that's the bees. Eggs, if chickens, like chickens in factory farming, it's been a long time since I've eaten any of those eggs. And I don't eat eggs at restaurants. And I tend to, perhaps occasionally, if I've had too much Guinness, I might have eggs or meat out at somewhere where I'm not sure where it's coming from. But I think I should stop doing that. But in general, I don't eat eggs or meat from a place if I'm not confident that it's coming from a good source. So I'll just be vegetarian, if that's the case. And so now, although I do it with sometimes a cheese pizza from places where I'm not sure where the milk's coming from, so perhaps that's also not really justified, full disclosure. Because we'll talk about dairy I guess we should talk about that now. But nonetheless, so I guess what I try to do is, thinking about this, what I will be doing is sticking to ethical sources of food when I'm eating out. And I think, everyone, they're on their own journey. Everyone's on their own journey and where they're comfortable with. But that's something I just want to do. I don't want to get a pepperoni pizza when I don't know where how those pigs are being raised. I don't want to be eating chickens that are having their beaks chopped off, pigs that are, living in their own squalor. Maybe they like that, dirty animals. And cows that, are living in terrible conditions, cramped inside under neon lights, and not outside where they should be. So, but nonetheless, if if they are raised in good conditions, so chickens, so eggs, we're talking about vegetarianism, right? So eggs, if they're from happy chickens that just are hanging out, they're roaming around, could be even be eating grain, I think as far as I know, the effect of that is it's less serious for chickens. I think they're than cows eating grains. I think for their health it wouldn't have as big an effect. I might be wrong there, but I'm not. But definitely it lowers the quality of the eggs though if they're eating grain. But if they're roaming around, ideally on grass, and then they're laying their eggs. If there's no rooster there, those eggs are never going to turn into chickens. It doesn't work, right? They're not fertilized. So by taking them and eating them, we're allowing the chickens to live. They're helping the earth. They're part of the ecosystem. And so why not do that? And makes us healthier. If we're healthier, and in general, if the world is healthier, there's more prosperity, and we've got survival handled. We've got nutrition taken care of. Then that allows us to engage in more elevation of our consciousness and being better custodians of the planet. So enough of the self-hatred of humans, we don't belong here. No, we're part of nature. We belong here. And we just need to, and even if you think, no, we're all screwed, let's just get rid of us. Most humans are not that, most humans have not lost their self-preservation instincts at this point, even at this point. And so even if 10% of people go, all right, let's sabotage our our system, and let's just stop doing this. Other countries are still going to do it, So I think the real way, if we want to move things in a better direction, we need to find common ground and start with the low-hanging fruit. Once we agree on that, we can move forward, But so chickens being like, yeah, okay, I won't hate you if you're eating eggs, but I'll just say, in a non-judgmental kind of likable manner, say, hey, have you ever had free-range eggs, like actual free-range, not like, because that's another problem, the labeling, like it could be free-range and they're outside for 1 hour a day, So, and again, problem with maybe lobbying the state, people go, hey, we're free-range. You like money, don't you, for your next election campaign? Or Mr. Bureaucrat, like, come meet my wife. Let's go to this fancy restaurant, So there's problems there in terms of labeling, it seems, but saying to someone, hey, actual chickens living on the land eating grass, eating bugs, have you ever eaten those eggs? And they're really delicious. They're really orange and really healthy for you. Also, more healthy, yeah. They're not much more expensive, and chickens are happier. And yeah, have you ever had them? You're like, no, I haven't. Oh, you should try them. They're really nice. That's a much more effective way of trying to improve the situation for chickens, right? Transitioning people, baby steps. Instead of saying stop eating eggs, go, hey, why don't you eat those eggs, which maybe clashes with my ideology of I don't want to eat any animal products. But hey, okay, if you're eating those better quality eggs, even if you're still eating meat and stuff, if I could persuade you to eat more ethical eggs, then that's a big victory, So I think vegetarians, you can eat eggs, and ideally from not from the factory farming system, I would say. Even if you're like, oh, I don't have much money, it's like, okay, you probably have, I don't know, eat less food and eat better quality food, or you can, I don't know, can you save money elsewhere? Can you drink less, or could you work a bit more? Or some people, maybe the answer is no, and they need to eat low quality food. Fair enough, I wish you all the best there. So some people are in much harder situations economically, financially, but ideally, yeah, divest from the factory farming system and industrial agriculture system in general, and so that those industries and the power and money behind them, those investment funds or whatever, or families who have the largest influence over them, and all the small investors who are part of them, etc., they'll all start deciding to shift towards this other model if we vote with our dollars. So we've got honey. I would say, yeah, no problem for vegetarians. Eggs, yeah, just do it right for both of them. Dairy, okay. Now this, I was just looking up a bit about this before this podcast, because the conventional dairy system now, and this is something where, to be honest, I probably did that deal with the devil of like, they probably don't need to look into that right now, But so but look, and then now in the middle of this podcast saying, oh yeah, I eat cheese pizzas from places where it's delicious, but I don't actually. It's like cheap enough where I would suspect they're getting the lowest, the cheapest cheese they can get probably. Meanwhile, there are other places where I think, it'd be good cheese. And I'm planning to ask them now. I'm going to go, hey, where do you get your cheese? Like the cow, can you tell me the farm? Can I look it up? And just see, and even in a friendly way, talking to your restaurants that you go to, or your butcher or whatever, and just asking questions like that. That lets them know, this is where the winds are going, and maybe even out of pure interest, they might go, that's a good question. I don't know. I'm going to ask them. And then they might go, oh, I might get a different supplier. Or, if you don't want to buy it, they might go, well, that's interesting. Maybe for more selfish reasons, I should think about getting a more sustainable one, and you might mention that, oh, well, yeah, I'm looking for farms. I know there's this farm and that farm. There's certain farms where they're doing it on this basis, and so they say it's not much more expensive, but it's just, they're taking care to do it right by the animals. That's what I'm going to, so thank you, but no, I'm not, I'm only interested in buying that kind of stuff. They might go, well, they might be, you might encourage them, which would be a big thing. If you're encouraging suppliers or butchers or restaurants to change stuff, not through pressuring them, but just through being honest and communicating, then that's a great thing. And likely to have a big effect and snowball effects. But conventional dairy, right? So they, a lot of it's factory farming, right? So that's, again, we've been through that, not very good. For, both for your health, the milk of cows who, many of them are sick, and are on antibiotics, or, having growth hormone to make them grow faster. They're stressed. They were taken away from their mother on the first day or within the first week, because apparently the longer you leave them with the mother, the more attached they get. Surprise, surprise. And so the more distress it causes, the more they will vocalize, says the article. I was reading Wikipedia for this, but in general, you got to double check your sources. But for this one, it seemed pretty much in favor of the, very non-critical of the industrial dairy system. So I read it, and I could probably believe that anything negative they're saying is probably true, because they're trying to say nothing negative. But in general, yeah, we should do wider research. But the cows, basically they look for their mums more, and they vocalize more, I guess, like, kind of crying or whatever, or just trying to communicate. But however, if they leave them longer, then they will be healthier and happier and more productive with milk. So they've probably got some calculus, some dark black magic calculus of like, okay, how long do we leave them with the mother so that we get optimum milk production, given that we don't want them to be too attached later. That'll be difficult and stress them, but we want them to be attached enough so they get that benefits of being happy and, thus producing more milk. So that's a bit messed up, right? The good news is that's not the only way, right? So this is really good news, as far as I can tell. So that is the conventional system, right? And so for health, I would say, like there's good evidence that is not as healthy as cows, which are eating grass, what they're meant to be eating naturally, right? It just makes sense. I believe this has been studied also, I'm not certain, but definitely with meat it has. So it makes sense that with other foods it'd be the same deal. It's the same animal, after all, cows. On top of that, you have raw milk is actually, as far as I understand it, much more healthy than the milk you get generally, where they're taking away a lot of the fat, which is the healthiest part of it. Sugar makes you fat. Fat doesn't make you fat unless you're also eating sugar. Then, it can be a problem. But so fat's actually very, very good for you. If it's part of like a healthy diet, low sugar diet, you know. And so natural fats, that is, not trans fats and, you know, artificial kind of stuff, or like seed oils from, you know, whatever. But so the uh, the the milk you're getting in terms of health from factory farming, they're often taking away the fat, and then maybe they're adding sugar or things to try to make it taste better, because fat makes it taste good. Get rid of the delicious, healthy part and put some substitute, which isn't even, you know, yeah. So there's that. Also, they are homogenizing it and pasteurizing it. So they're heating it up basically, right, to kill bacteria and enzymes. And the reason they do this is to make it last longer so that they can sell more of it. It's a mass production strategy. However, it's not actually necessary for your health. In fact, it's far healthier, as I understand it. Don't sue me. The enzymes, like there's good bacteria and bad bacteria, right? So if you're just heating it all, you're killing both of them. And at the beginning, it seems like it's good bacteria. It's like the bad bacteria comes in later. So you're getting this stuff which is a food, you know, designed by Mother Nature for these baby cows, and it helps them grow. These little mammals, it helps them grow very fast, same as mother's milk for us, right? Now, we're not cows, sure, but we have been trying to survive, and it's been very difficult for thousands of years. And for the last 10,000 years, we've been drinking goat milk, sheep milk, cow's milk, etc., right? And turning it into cheese and yogurt and whatever. And you might say, we shouldn't have been doing that. Okay, well, you know, it's easy for you to say that now as the inheritor of all that hard work of these people having a rough time, most of them having a very difficult time to get through history, and we should be very grateful for our ancestors, I think. And all ancestors, the whole species, you know. And we're all pretty closely related when you zoom out, you know, a little bit. Anyway, so, but this little, you know, growth juice from the, you know, which is milk, it's, you know, good. It's healthy for baby cows and healthy enough for humans. Now, nothing is totally healthy. Like, well, I mean, many things are a bit of a mix. Like vegetables, a lot of them, you know, will have a bit of some stuff which isn't so good. Like spinach and kale, very healthy, but it has oxalates. These things that aren't really good for you. And so if you cook it a bit or steam it, I believe it's a bit better for you. So usually cooking decreases the nutritional value of food in general. Makes it less bioavailable, like harder, you know, you get less out of it. If you've grilled some carrots versus a fresh carrot, you know, you're getting less nutrition in general. But with certain things like kale, spinach, etc., I think because of the oxalates, when you cook it, it actually makes it better for you. But anyway, you know, vegetables can have things that aren't that good for you, you know, but it's more good than bad, right? So it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, you know, still worth doing. Dairy seems like I don't know about the details of it. I think it's different for everyone's body, but it definitely keeps us alive. So that's something to be said for it. It's food. It's edible. It keeps us alive. Many people in the world, that's all they need. They're not some Westerner, you know, thinking about, you know, whether they should go vegan or not. They've got babies who are sick, and, you know, warplanes are, you know, bombing the nearby village, and, you know, there's a whole other worlds on this planet, you know, and so if we're thinking about the general patterns of what's a healthy way to live and what should we organize our society upon, and what should we be making, then I think it's important to be able to concede, like, yeah, okay, maybe dairy in a certain way, it might not be the healthiest thing. For some people, it seems like it's, you know, less healthy. It causes more problems. But cheese and more fermented versions like kefir, which is probiotic, which is very good for you if you can tolerate dairy, and Greek yogurt, not with sugar, but the fatty, as fat as possible. Greek yogurt, good for you if you can tolerate, you know, dairy, and then cheese, and then even milk, you know, and cream. I think it's important to be able to understand, okay, even if I'm not going to eat them, to understand, like, what is right for our society to be doing, and is it okay that people are producing these things? And yeah, I think it is okay. And it boosts the food production. It allows more cows can have a livelihood. They have a reason to be there. I will get to the issue of the mothers being separated from the babies because that's important. But in terms of the health, raw milk seems to be the healthiest because it doesn't. You just need to drink it soon enough. Within a few days or even within a week, I think, or longer maybe, depending on certain conditions. But definitely within a few days. So you can have local farmers producing raw milk for people, and that's going to be the healthiest form as far as I'm aware. And so, and it's the most delicious. Very, very good. So the factory farming system, you're getting that homogenization and pasteurization of dairy, making it basically killing all the good enzymes and bacteria. Then it makes it harder for your stomach to process it, basically. So you need to do it all the work yourself, whereas the enzymes in the milk will help you digest it, as far as I understand it. Less energy is required of your body. And so in terms of health, I think, it depends on the person, but vegetarians can be having these things, dairy, eggs, and honey, and they're animal products, but they can be good for you, Now, in terms of ahimsa and suffering, okay, so the chickens, I think, chickens are probably pretty happy just hanging out, being little dinosaurs, and if they're on grass, I think they would notice that difference less than cows. But I still think they must notice it on some level, and we notice it and we like it, being able to see these chickens hanging around, it's nicer than having them in a factory, especially with their beaks chopped off. So that's good. Bees, everyone likes bees, right? Everyone wants to be free. So that's nice. You can have people, if you've got like an apartment building or something, or where you could have access to the rooftop. A dear friend of mine in Montreal had, or maybe has, a beehive on top of the roof, and made or makes honey from it. And so that's a little bit less pressure on the earth. You're kind of taking care of your own food supply, and good for you, connecting with nature, good for your psychology, right? Interacting with the bees, and they get to have their little society thing. And you have honey, which is very healthy. Honey is incredible for, if you've got a cold, honey often can be very good in kind of mysterious ways. But honey can be quite medicinal, apart from being full of sugar, but it's more of a less processed type of sugar, as far as I understand it. So healthy for you. And there's other stuff in there, like other good juju for you. But, of course, sculling honey might not be the healthiest thing to do, even if you might want to. But in terms of, ahimsa, I think there's nothing wrong with having animals doing things under our, lordship, so to speak, as humans. For all we know, there's beings who are doing that to us. We don't know. Maybe there's some angels and demons in some other dimension we can't even see, having, little political tussles, and, or maybe, the universe is kind of like a gardener, and we're kind of, just these, who knows? I don't have evidence for this, but just saying, or even in, we're all subject to power. We all pay taxes, and we might say, I think, maybe that's not the best analogy, because I think we really shouldn't really be subject so much to these powers. It should be, you can do whatever you want so long as you're not hurting others. If you are, then on behalf of those others, the state is going to come in and stop you, but not on the state's own behalf, on the behalf of others. And it needs to be very restricted. But I guess I could say, for those who believe the state does have that right, well, okay, then I wouldn't really kind of agree with that too much. But then it would be a kind of similar thing to think that you could have a benevolent power over other creatures. Like, the bees are here, I put them here, that's how it is, So for whatever reason, chickens, bees, that's cool. Cows. Now, the ahimsa of, I talked about the conventional system of dairy. But I want to read for you something. I was just reading about an article I saw about a system of dairy manufacture where you don't need to be taking the cows away from their calves, the calves away from their cows, until you can instead of a few days, you can have them there for 6 to 9 months, like until they're big and strong and kind of becoming independent and ready to move off. So I've decided I'm gonna read directly. There's a few quotes here from this. I'm going to tell you the name of the article and the author, but I thought it was very, very interesting. And it seems like it shows the potential for the dairy industry does not need to be written off, and that should be good news for vegans, ironically, because it means it's much more achievable to bring justice for these animals, because otherwise it was going to be a big battle, very hard to get to just shut down dairy. But if it's not shut down dairy, if it's transition dairy to an ethical model, and that ethical model does exist, let me know what you think, then that's actually much more achievable. So that should be good news even to vegans. And so, yeah, so let's read the details here. See if I can read this. Okay. Can I make that bigger? Yes. Okay. So it mentions, the site is Ethical Consumer. Ethical Consumer. And the title of the article is Ethical Dairy Farming. The author, Anna Clayton, written 17th of February 2020. All right, thanks, Anna. So talking about, on the fringes of the dairy sector can be found models of small-scale dairy farming that work better for animals and the landscapes they roam. Now it says small-scale, but I don't see any reason why this couldn't be scaled up. It talks about the Ahimsa. This is where I was reminded of this word, serendipitously. Ahimsa Dairy Foundation, and then another one, Calf at Foot. Okay, so basically this the first one, Ahimsa. So it's a dairy farm where they do not slaughter the cows at all. So the idea of ahimsa, non-violence. So basically, they say fundamentally the team believe that it is wrong to take a cow's milk and be sustained by this miracle food and then kill her when she becomes less productive. She deserves a happy old age, chewing the cud with her friends and relations in the fields, in gratitude for all she has given. Amen. So the idea is they don't kill the cow, they just let the cow. And I think about this, in context of what we've been saying, the cow's enriching the soil, so that's actually an investment in the soil. Yeah, the cow's eating some of the grass, but that's benefiting the soil, so you get more grass in the future. Good for the cow, good for you. And of course, yeah, you can give that beautiful gift of not needing to kill the cow. Now, as I've said, I'm not in principle against killing cows, but I do get a nice, beautiful feeling thinking about how that cow doesn't need to be killed, and that we can have choices. And as individuals, as humanity, we can be united, while united in our respect for diversity and allowing, not as some buzzword, to get, virtue signaling or brownie points, but as a real thing of, allowing different approaches to work in harmony. So some people can have dairy and then maybe slaughter cows, others, but do it in a humane way. Others will be drawn to just letting them live out their lives, So, so let's see. There's a quote here from Ahimsa Dairy Farm. At a time when fossil fuels are destroying the world and leading to catastrophic climate change, it makes no sense to kill bull calves in their thousands. Their strength and muscle can be employed to work the land as they did for centuries, even in Britain, before the advent of the Industrial Revolution and the tractor. Oxen work in harmony with nature, and their hooves do not damage the precious soil as heavy machinery does. Their dung and urine is also a vital fertilizer for the earth feeding billions of microorganisms and worms and creating healthy pasture, which acts as an important carbon sink. So the idea there, and they say here, yes, the calves stay with their mothers and the herd for at least 6 months until they become big and strong. So at the moment, they have 35 milking cows, calves, and oxen. Oxen being male cows who have had their testicles chopped off. Yikes. Which makes them able to be more, as I understand it, that's not very ahimsa of you. Very more like less aggressive because less testosterone. So instead of trying to kill the other males or whatever or dominate, or they can be work animals and kind of just chill, kind of like eunuchs of the cow world. And so yeah, so the milking cows are mainly milked by hand and only visit the bull every 2 to 4 years. They have one bull. They do not have yearly pregnancies as in conventional dairies. So conventional dairies, they're pregnant for like 10 months or something, and then they let them chill for like 60 days or something, and then they get them pregnant again, and often through artificial insemination. So it's not even, you're not even getting the sex, so hard times. So whereas this non-conventional dairy, it seems like they are able to have every 2 to 4 years the cows are becoming pregnant with a bull, real bull. They're having this experience, which all their ancestors have had, and they are able to stay with their calves while their calves are growing, up until, and at I think at like 13 months or something, a lot or something around a year, cows, the calves are able to become pregnant. So it's much sooner than humans. The humans have a very, very slow developmental period. For animals, I think it's the longest there is. Like horses can run within 5 minutes or something. So cows can be pregnant, I think, within a year or maybe a little bit more. And so for 6 to 9 months or so, these two dairies are saying they'll have the calves growing up with their mum and the herd, and then they'll be moved off to wherever they're going. So you might say that's not perfect still, but hey, if we could transition factory farming towards this, would that not be a hell of a lot better? And should we maybe not just try to get that locked in, and then we can address whether some people think we should shut this down totally or not? At least this would be, and I don't think that will be successful, but surely this is where we should be uniting if we really care about our own health, ahimsa, and the well-being of these creatures, and also I guess ecology. Like these cows are living on the land, so again, if you can have cows on the land, it can enrich the land, and instead of having to, the farmer needs to make money, support their family or whatever, instead of growing corn or GMO soy or whatever it is, with pesticides and the traditional thing, if there are these other options of you can have cows for meat, or cows, even if you don't want to be killing cows, you can have cows for dairy. You don't need to separate the mums, from the babies, and you can make money while improving the soils, sequestering carbon, enriching the soils, and humans get more food. Food shortages, people keep talking about, politicians, so hey, food is precious. We need to be, if we lose our food supply, then people get much more barbaric, and so a lot rests upon keeping the foundation sturdy and productive. So so that's one thing. I thought that was really cool, like more power to them. That's really good work, it seems. Now let's see what else. So okay. So then Calf at Foot, the other dairy, so they're saying, they sell raw milk from the farm gate, offer deliveries via an online shop. So, seems it's small scale, but we could have a lot of small scale people doing this, or I don't see why not bigger ones. But let's see, another quote I want to just mention here, which was quite good and interesting. So they, here we go. All right. Our cows are moved across fields swiftly as a bunch, similar to how wild herds of herbivores move to protect themselves from natural predators. This grazing rhythm helps to create and maintain a soil carbon sponge. Okay. Under hoof, the soil is healthy, fertile, and rich in organic matter. Leguminous plants, grasses, and herbs draw down carbon, locking it into the soil to feed the plant roots. The resulting deeper taproots not only mine the soil, bringing trace elements and minerals to the surface to enrich our food with micronutrients, but are key for breaking up compacted soils. This allows rainwater to penetrate deep into the ground and prevents runoff, building resilience to drought and flooding. Populations of beneficial bacteria, fungi, wildflowers, seeds, and invertebrates bloom. This banquet brings insect-loving songbirds and seed-loving finches. Nectar and pollinators abound, followed by small mammals, amphibians, grass snakes, and raptors. This is a form of regenerative agriculture. So that sounds all right, you know. And should we just totally shut down dairy, or should we maybe transition to this? So I'd say vegetarians who want to have dairy, if they could put their money into this sort of stuff, then that could be seems totally reasonable on all those counts: health, ahimsa, ecology. Now, omnivores. All right. So, meat, red meat does not, as far as I can tell, after looking into this quite a bit, red meat does not cause health problems. It's not unhealthy. It's actually healthy, very healthy. If it's coming from a factory farm, maybe it's not healthy, but it's very high in protein and fats. And I think the protein from meat is more bioavailable than from plants. So even if it's kale's got more protein or something, or whatever it is, like the same amount of protein in, you know, kale and beef, if you eat the beef, you will end up having more protein because it's more bioavailable. It seems like our ancestors potentially were eating more of that by, you know, our hunting, the way we were hunters and gatherers. There probably wasn't a lot of, I mean, yeah, I don't know, but it seems like that is a fact. So now, and there's a lot of, you know, minerals and vitamins in meat, you know, red meat, even, you know, pork and chicken, fish. Okay, pescatarians. I missed pescatarians. Before we talk about omnivores. Yeah, so just pescatarians, you have to stop pretending you're vegetarians. Call yourself what you are. Don't lie to us. No, you're all right. So, yeah, I think, for one thing, for health, just be careful getting good quality fish, you know, and whatever you're eating, because there's a lot of pollutants in the ocean these days. Also, in terms of ahimsa and, you know, being good to the animals in terms of minimizing suffering, yeah, fish are less conscious creatures, it seems, than a lot of the bigger animals, so fair enough. Just try to make sure it's not part of this, you know, industrial fishing system. An interesting thing is mussels, I think it's mussels and certain kinds of creatures, like, I think it's just mussels and maybe something similar. They're so primitive. They're more primitive than plants, than a lot of plants. And so even if you're vegetarian and you don't want to eat any animals, you could consider being a kind of quasi-pescatarian where you just eat for protein, because so long as they're not, you know, polluted or something, you know, they've got protein and fats and a lot of healthy stuff in mussels. And I think it's just like when you touch it, it closes. I think it's like a trigger mechanism. They've got no central nervous system. Neither does a plant, though, surely. But I think I've heard that there is good evidence that they are like there's less of a case for there's a good case that they are less conscious than plants. That's another thing actually with plants for vegetarians and vegans. The plants are more conscious than we realized. So in terms of death, like if you're eating all these plants, you know, you're killing the plants and you're eating them, right? Fruit, okay, you're not killing the tree, and it's kind of giving it to you. Take it, eat it, poop out the seeds over there so I can spread my progeny of baby trees. You know, they want you to do it, so that's a bit different maybe. But like with, you know, you're eating kale, or, you know, and then the plant dies. And, you know, sure, I guess they want us to eat them to some extent so that we can grow them and spread them, perhaps. But here's some interesting stuff. So plants, that when a little bug starts to eat the leaves of a plant, the plant produces chemicals which act as a warning. They produce chemicals which make them taste bad, like caffeine, I think is one of these, where so the bugs will get messed up, I think from taste, but also possibly will, like toxins, nerve toxins and things, which will mess with the bugs. So the bugs like will stop eating them. And so they might eat all of a few leaves, but then now the plants produce this chemical throughout it. And so the bug stops eating and moves on to the next one. But the next plant has received that warning signal from the first plant, and it's already started to produce the similar stuff. And so that bug can eat some of them, but then it's going to be a similar thing. And so pretty soon it doesn't want to touch any of these plants. It has to go off to a different area. So this is the defense mechanism, plants, because plants can't move. The only way they can protect themselves is through chemistry. And so they alter their chemistry to deter predators, so that they can keep growing, you know. I tried to grow cabbage in my granny's back garden like last year, and freaking slugs just ate almost everything. You know, I managed to have a little bit. We got, I think, we had a meal together, bacon and cabbage, old school Irish style, but it was delicious. But yeah, so, you know, the bugs just will go rampant. But plants, especially when the soil is healthy, plants are very able to protect themselves. A lot of the need for pesticides nowadays, apparently, is that the soils are depleted. But when people have regenerative agriculture or Korean natural farming, these sorts of approaches, the soils, when they become so healthy, the plants are much sturdier, and they can produce, they can produce their own pesticides, you know, natural ones, which aren't going to be bad for us. But plants are doing that. So that shows a certain level of intelligence, right? And plants will also trade. They take in, through photosynthesis, they take in sunlight, and they basically turn it into, and they take in carbon dioxide, breathing that in and breathing out oxygen for us. Thanks, fellas. Thanks, plants. Very good of you. And through some magic of, you know, wishy-washy, bombaloo, something, abracadabra, they create, I think, sugars. Well, they're basically they use carbon. They build themselves out of carbon, but I think they can also produce sugars. Hence, you know, fruit, it's like sugar. But I think they use this, and they trade the sugar with mycelium and fungi under the earth. And so they trade it. They give, I don't know if it's like, hey, give me this, I give you that, or if it's just like a kind of automatic process, but it kind of seems conscious. I don't know. But they trade the sugar, and the fungi use that to, you know, propagate themselves and spread, and they can in turn mine rocks. So there's all the rocks under the soil. The fungi can kind of, through various means, process them and extract their minerals and send them up to the plants, and the plants use them to, you know, for their own health. And so there's this exchange of between the plants and the fungi, which is pretty crazy. Also, plants send resources. They've done a thing where they put, some scientists put, I think, a radioactive isotope or isotopes in one plant somehow, something like this. And then they were able to monitor with a Geiger counter, I think, where it went. And they found that plants share resources even between species. And so, and often they share it with the weakest link. They try to support the weakest link in the area. And it seems that the idea is potentially that they are not just perceiving themselves as one separate entity, maybe as humans might, less enlightened humans, but that, oh, we're all the forest. If the forest is not good, then I'm not good. If the forest is good, I'm good. You know, like trying to support themselves and their neighbors, which is pretty crazy. pretty interesting. And another thing, now this is kind of the craziest evidence for plant intelligence, is that vegans like, don't tell me, I don't want to know. Where's that devil? So they've played. So if plants get chomped on, yeah, they create some chemical, which like a defense chemical. So yeah, the chemicals to protect themselves, and also chemicals which warn others of like, hey, watch out, lads, here's some bug coming to eat us. Now, they've done studies where they played plants the sound, a recording of plants being eaten. It wasn't a plant being eaten. There was no real plant being eaten and releasing a warning signal to the others. They played, and no plants in here were being eaten. None of them were touched. They played a recording of plants being chewed and eaten, and the plants created the warning signal and started to prepare for an attack. So that sure seems like they're intelligent. So that's pretty strange, Anyway, point being, there's some argument to be made that even plants are conscious entities, and again, I think this makes sense for other reasons, mysticism or whatever, or non-duality and everything being consciousness. But the idea that they are not just like a rock's consciousness, and it's like, oh, I'm just here being a rock, not like thinking, but it's just a space of rockness, there's some vague, not maybe like the same consciousness we have, but some sort of consciousness, some sort of internal experience of being a rock. Maybe plants are a bit more than that. Maybe they're actually a bit more like little characters, And then if we're eating them, well, they got to live and then they die. We get to live, then we die, and then the earth eats us. We go back, return ashes to ashes, dust to dust, return to the soil, feeding the soil. Or in nature, you might get eaten by an actual animal. People still get eaten by animals, right? We were eaten by animals for a long time. And life eats life, and that's how it works. What did Joe Rogan say? It's like the green stuff grows, and then dumb stuff eats the green stuff, and then mean stuff eats the dumb stuff, or something like that. That's one way to look at it. But there's an ecosystem and a cycle of energy moving around. And meanwhile, I think it's all just bodies, and the consciousness, which is incarnating into them, the soul, the life, the spirit, is not being eaten. It's just going in and out of forms, experiencing these virtual realities called lifetimes. That's something for vegans and vegetarians being aware of. If you're criticizing people for eating, like taking life, that's another factor there, right? Again, I'm not saying this is just the factors to be aware of. Okay, omnivores. And pescatarians. So ecologically also, of course, like you want to be aware of the extreme pressures on the oceans and trying to eat in alignment with that, I guess. So, okay. So that's pescatarians finished. Omnivores, meat, red meat, all these meats, they can be, as far as I understand, they are healthy for you if they are from, they're not from the factory farming system. They're from a more natural system. So I think it seems like pork is not as healthy as red meat or chicken. I might be wrong about that, but I think, that might be the case. And some of the healthiest stuff is organ meats. Like liver is actually the most nutrient-dense food in the world, I think. By the way, if you're vegan, watercress is very good for you. That's, I believe, the most nutrient-dense plant food, watercress. And you can put it in your green smoothies, and it's really amazing. Like you don't taste it much, but it's full of like all these vitamins and minerals. They used to call it poor man's bread because people who couldn't afford bread could go to the side of the stream where it grows abundantly and just pick some of it and chomp on it and maybe keep themselves going. So that's something you could do. But in terms of including animal foods, then liver is the most nutrient dense, and it's full of all sorts of good stuff. And it's interesting that it's processing all the toxins and bad stuff for us, and then somehow, it is the healthiest part. That's almost like a metaphor or something, transforming pain, and you will be the furthest from pain. Alchemy. But other organ meats like hearts and kidneys and stuff, they're all very healthy, and I believe healthier than the muscle which we eat these days. The meat, and traditional cultures, they eat all the organs, and we're like, ugh, but that's actually very healthy, and also waste not, want not. If you're killing these animals, using all of them kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And so I think that's one thing. We shouldn't be wasting organs and stuff. If we are killing these animals, ideally they've been raised in happy settings, and then those organs can either be sold off for people to eat them if people want to, or else like hardened soil are doing, turning them into pills, like nutrients, supplements, or, turn them into cat food or whatever, other animals that want to eat animals. And so that's something I think we can do if we're, in terms of our karma, if we're killing these animals, then to make sure we're not wasting any of it. Bones can be boiled and turned into bone broth, which is delicious, and very, very healthy. So it's like the bone marrow in there, and there's all kinds of stuff in the bones where you boil it in water. Like one thing you can do is, say you roast a chicken, and then after you've eaten the chicken, all the meat from it, you boil the bones with garlic and onion. And my grandma did it, and you strain that, and it's this creamy, delicious soup. So you could have just thrown it out, but now you're getting this very healthy meal out of. So you're actually properly kind of appreciating the gift of this body. I think it's important to remember, if you're eating meat, to at least just put a little bit of effort into being aware of the gift of that. And I guess it could be the same. The same could be said for plants and things, but I think there is something for these more conscious creatures, because it's getting a bit closer to, say, our level of consciousness, where we know, we wouldn't eat another person. That would be absolutely evil, right? So when these animals are getting a bit more conscious, it starts to get where some people would say, no, they are at that level, and others say, no, they're not at that level. Look, I can do this, and the cow doesn't know what I'm doing at all. They're not at our level. So you can have a conversation about it, but it's definitely getting closer. And so I think, when I eat meat, I will say, thank you for the gift of your life and body, or thank you for the gift of your body. And that's just my thing, whatever. You don't need to do that. But it's the idea of just saying, from my point of view, it's like, I'm not eating your soul, however, your life ended so that this food, your body could be turned into food. Your mortal clothes, were stripped from you, and so that was the end of your experience here. Possibly it involves suffering. Definitely it involves the limiting of your opportunity in this dimension. So I feel drawn to express a gratitude and a humility to that. But that's just me. But I think you don't need to say, grace or some sort of mantra or whatever to express appreciation, but just to be appreciative, and to think about, where it comes from, and, yeah, it's good. Makes you happier too, being aware, ironically, because it's kind of like, wow, yeah, I'm lucky to be alive, to be in this position, Now, so health, yeah, I think in general, if someone wanted to be healthy, it's like, I'm having health problems. I'm not here to give health advice. I don't know. I think everyone's situation's a bit different. But in general, I think the advice is eat meat, vegetables, and fruit. Some grains if you want, but you could just skip them if you want. Meat, like vegetables and fruits, easy on the sugar, and try to get a good variety, fresh stuff, and organic, happy animals, which are not from factory farms. And it's pretty hard to go wrong with that, I think. You're going to get healthy, as far as I understand the science of it. Okay, so that's the health of omnivores. Ahimsa, yes, we've kind of gone through that a bit already. So that I think it's fair enough for these animals. If they can have a happy, dignified life and then it ends, then that's better than not having any life, I think. And and by having that experience, they enrich the soils, and they also enrich humanity and allow us to live and have that food supply, very nutritious food, and then that allows us potentially to create art, to understand the universe, even, on a very practical level. Mother Nature maybe wants us to get advanced enough and at the same time spiritually aware enough where we can be guardians of the planet and perhaps protect it from freaking asteroids which come every 12,000 years or something, and reset the clock. So, not saying just an aside sort of thing here. There's a lot of good that humanity can do, and I think, almost everyone I know is a great person. What about you? What percentage of people that you know do you like, or do you think are good? Maybe troubled, some of them, but good at their core, and or even just not at their core, just good people. They're either okay or good. I think that's the vast majority, and so and that's humanity. That's us. So sometimes it gets abstract. Look at these bad things. But a lot of that is people in situations that we don't quite understand, very, very privileged. And so they've got certain baggage or perceptions, very, very unprivileged. And so they've got certain baggage and perceptions based on that, So, yes. All right. Now, so omnivoranity, omnivorous living. So also ecology, enriching the soils through cattle, that's one thing, and chickens, and etc. Also, there's a lot of grassland. I think maybe 2/3 of the Earth's surface is not farmable. I think. I think it's 2/3, of the land. And I think, however, we could put cows there. Of course, some of it is desert, so I'm not quite sure what the number is, but there's a huge area, either 1/3 or 2/3 of all the land we could put cows on. We couldn't grow like vegetables; it's not fertile enough, and maybe not even growing crops like wheat. Due to weather or whatever, but we could have this grass able to grow, and then cows can eat the grass. They can process it through their, several stomachs or whatever, poop it out, and then, they're enriching the soil there, and they're sequestering carbon also. And potentially we can be maybe using them for dairy or beef, or leather or whatever. So these are ways to uplift humanity, providing the basics. Remember, a lot of humanity still doesn't have the basics taken care of, and while treating them nobly and with dignity. Or even we just let them roam around, and just improve the soils. But it would kind of seem to make sense to maybe do a bit of both to fund it, make it sustainable as an enterprise. But so that's just another thing to mention apart from the using agriculture itself. And the farm, improving farmland soil. What else? All right, so eating very intelligent beings. Now this is okay. Well, first, carnivore diet. I mean, if you're eating, I think it's pretty expensive to have the carnivore diet where you're just eating meat. But if you want to do that, I think sure, if you're getting animals that are from these ethically sourced places, which I believe exist, then you can do that. And especially if you're eating organ meats and stuff, so you're making the most of the animals. If you can be healthy and if you can be contributing to farms where they're raising animals fairly and they get a good life and a dignified death and with minimum suffering, then cool. And ecologically, these farms, if they are using a regenerative agriculture approach, then that's good. You're enhancing the earth. The earth's happy you're doing it. So why not? Now, in terms of health, a lot of people have reported a lot of benefits from the carnivore diet. Like there's people with autoimmune disorders who say that they've totally cleared up. So potentially they had some sort of allergic reaction to vegetables and things. Others, report all kinds of things like, benefits. However, I think it's still not really clear what the case is there. And I don't really know enough about it to comment. But yeah. But if you're interested, yeah, like that doctor, what is his name? The Heart and Soil guy, Doctor. Yeah, I can't remember. But you could look into his kind of work on that guy. Yeah. Or you go carnivore diet, Aubrey Marcus podcast. Aubrey Marcus had a good podcast with this fellow, as did Joe Rogan. Anyway, so okay, so that's all I can really say about that. Now, eating really intelligent animals. So say eating whales, cetaceans, whales and dolphins. And personally, I would think even if it's your tradition, your kind of traditional culture, look, ideally we shouldn't be doing that because I think these beings are too intelligent. But then octopuses are also extremely intelligent, it seems. And people eat, I haven't eaten them, but people eat them. So I guess it's a tricky one. Or like, eating monkeys, like bush meat, like people eating monkeys in places where they're so poor, they've got no options. In Africa, there's certain places where people are in terrible dire straits, and they're eating these creatures. So that just seems a bit wrong to me. It just seems like in terms of the ahimsa, they are too aware. And so you can't really do it. There's a certain threshold of awareness which is crossed there, where it's just too much suffering. Now you could argue that about like cows, etc. But yeah, I don't know. You might be right there with that, but I would kind of feel that probably they're not quite at that level, cows. But I might be wrong. Definitely, they might actually be conscious enough where it's like we should just be milking them or nothing. But anyway, at least I think the really important point here is we can't expect people to stop eating them overnight. And so we need to rally together and with a spirit of unity and understanding and non-judgment and just be honest and talk about things and have this hopeful message. People like hope. People don't like doom, right? And try to say, look, we can just make these shifts. Shift egg production, milk production, beef production, make it more better for our health, the ahimsa, and the ecology. So let's do that. And then we can talk about, we can maybe do studies, figure out exactly how intelligent are these animals and what are the limits? Why can't we eat people, humans, but we can eat, cows or dolphins potentially in certain countries or whatever. So another thing to mention with meat is hunting. Now, hunting might sound like the worst of all things. Like, oh, why do you want to go kill these animals? What are you, crazy? But look, if you're hunting for trophies, like, yeah, I killed this lion, look at me, then all right, I can't really relate with that much. I guess, on some level you want to, there's some sort of enjoyment and it feels like an adventure and you're connecting with your ancestors who maybe killed big animals to protect the local people, or to show their skill. Okay, but I don't really resonate with that, and I think we'd probably be better off without trophy hunting. But hunting for food actually, I think, is a pretty good idea. I don't think everyone can do it, but because there's probably not enough animals for this. But actually, it's counterintuitive, but it's actually probably the most ethical way to get meat. So if you are going to eat meat, if you go hunting yourself, you're putting in the work, you're earning your meat, right? And you're going to have to suffer a lot to get it. And it's hard work. And hunters, almost all of them, they say, all of them that I've heard, they're all very humble people, who, and maybe these are just the ones going on podcasts, but they say, the hunting community is actually in general, very ecologically aware. They care about nature and preserving it. They love the animals, or they respect the animals, but they just say, we are animals too, and we are part of this system, and we eat, and so they will be grateful for their kills. They kill, so they go hunting and they kill a deer with bow hunting. Some people kill them with bows or with a rifle. Either way, you should do what you are competent at, right? So if you're doing this, you need to make sure you can kill them with minimum suffering. So just there's a noise, the deer runs off, like what's going on, and then falls over, and it's been shot in the heart, and it didn't, oh, it's over, it's all over. So that's a very short period of suffering if you can do it like that. And that animal lived its whole life in the wild, was able to mate or meet other of its species and explore, no limits, no humans telling what to do, can go anywhere, and then the last moment of its life, and it's dead. Now, naturally, the way these animals don't live that long. Naturally, the way deer and elk and moose and whatever, the way they normally die is starvation, from having no food, often in winter, or freezing to death in winter, or being eaten alive by wolves or bears. And so humans kill and then we eat them. A lot of the natural predators, they eat them alive, sometimes from, I won't tell you where they start, but, sometimes it's pretty rough. And it seems like the animals go into some sort of shock state where they're kind of not really there, or maybe some mystics have said, like, there's a kind of the consciousness realizes its identity with the universe, and it's not. It kind of goes, oh, I'm not this little thing, as it's watching the thing get eaten. I don't know, but you would hope there's some sort of, way out of that suffering there, because, but you see, animals. It seems pretty rough the way a lot of animals die when humans kill them. Compared to that, that's actually, if you're a deer in the wild, probably the best way, the easiest death you could have is probably from a human just shooting you. So now, and then that food, very, very healthy food. These animals in the wild eating wild stuff all its life. And so that, can go and feed the human and their family and keep them happy and healthy, right? So that's a legacy this animal can have. The way they do it in the United States is they have hunting tags. So, you can't just hunt anything. There's certain things. Yeah, you can hunt these, you can hunt that, but this thing, there's not many of these things. We're not allowed to hunt them, so to be able to get a hunting tag where you can go and hunt something in this area, you need to pay money, right? And so you pay for that, and then you can go and hunt it. And that the money from the hunting tag goes toward preservation of nature. And that's how they fund the wildlife protection services. Something like 80% of the funding for the national parks comes from hunting. And that's from the tags, something huge like that. I'm not sure exactly. But it comes from the hunting tags, like the license, basically, to hunt one buck or whatever it is this season in this area. And also from those taxes on hunting gear, like rifles, bows, and clothing, that kind of stuff. So there's taxes on it where the proceeds of that also goes towards wildlife preservation. So that seems like a part of the puzzle where probably a lot of people won't have the interest, the ability, or the money to go out, or the time to go out and do hunting like this. But for those that do, it's taking off some pressure away from the burdened soils of our agricultural system, and B, it's it's supporting financially, getting the money for this very important work of preserving natural areas, and 3, C, it's kind of inculcating and engendering, cultivating, developing this sense of connection with nature among humans, which is something we've really lost to a large extent, and it's a big problem where people go, oh, who cares about these things? It doesn't matter, because we don't really feel that we are part of it. You just go to the supermarket and you go, oh, there's like a slab of red stuff covered in plastic, and you just go and tap your card, and now you have it, and and you go and cook it. Whereas a hunter, they're eating their steak or whatever, and they're remembering where they were and what they went through to get it, and it's just a bit more of probably a grateful experience, I would think. But some people might think hunting is just totally wrong. Hey, fair enough. You know, you can have that perspective. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying this is my perspective, and many people's perspective. And yeah, again, the important thing is that we talk about these things, and we're not afraid to be exposed to different ideas, because either we learn, or you see what other people think, and so you can formulate what you want to say. If someone says that, like that Jamie guy said that thing, I totally disagree. All right, what if someone says that to me, but I don't know what to say back? So even if you don't agree with me, this might allow you to think, okay, some people think this way. How can I show them that that's not true? And it helps you formulate your own ideas. Next time you meet someone who's saying something similar, you can kind of engage them and try to help them see what you think is more accurate. So, yeah. But that said, I would say hunting, I think, for food, when done right in a proper system, it could be a healthy part of the food system going forward. But it would be a small percentage of the people doing it, probably. Now, and of course, within the parameters of maintaining the ecology, right? And if you do it right, it can enhance the ecology. Oh, another thing, similar in Africa, there's places where, due to poachers going in and shooting elephants for their tusks, so they can send it some soup that's meant to give you erections or something, and there's all these people killing animals for their hides and all kinds of stuff. There's all kind of endangered animals being killed in Africa, and there was, I think it was a Louis Theroux documentary where it went talking to people who they have set up wildlife parks, but they're hunting reserves where they're called tall fence operations, high fence operations or something, where you have these huge areas, like a big safari area, and there are these animals in there. There's lions, there's elephants, there's all kinds of stuff, and people go in there who want to hunt, from like rich people from Western countries or something, and they go there and they can hunt an animal and kill it, and they pay a lot for that, to be able to do that. And then, but because of all the money that's coming from these things, the parks are able to afford rangers with proper guns and proper salaries who aren't going to get bought off by the local crime syndicate who want to go poach some animals to sell them to Asia or whatever. And so it's like you've got this, you're allowing people to come and kill elephants and things. Elephants, I think lions. So animals like this, where they're not doing it for food, it's trophy hunting, and yet this apparently is causing an increase in the population of these endangered animals, because otherwise they're just being picked off. And so the humans have said, all right, we're going to allow a small number of people to come in and pick one off here, one off there. And by doing this, with all that money, we're able to set a perimeter and maintain this area where most of the animals, the animal population as a whole, is increasing, because we are just controlling the number of people who are coming in and taking them. Whereas if you don't do that, you're like, well, that's wrong, we shouldn't do it. And then maybe all the animals go extinct because poachers just come in. So these things are messy, but that's just something to mention. I don't really know what the solution there is, but maybe addressing the corruption in these governments and establishing the rule of law might be a start. And I guess the start of that would be spreading consciousness, starting with yourself and myself. So, all right. Now the role of the dice. No, the role of tradition. Okay, so with all this stuff about the ethics of eating and what's right and what's wrong, we need to be aware that people have their traditions, and there's something beautiful and sacred in that, like the ways of living that have been passed down by your ancestors. And so, if people are vegan or vegetarian, and if they're kind of like evangelical and they want people to stop eating meat, etc., I think it's very important to be aware that there's a large amount of people who are never going to do that. And you have to accept that, because it's their tradition. In my religion, we eat this thing. Or, in my culture, we eat this on, at the beginning of spring. We eat this special, this soup made from some animal, And from my point of view, again, like, I think consciousness is immortal. It's just the fabric of the universe is life. It's aware. It's living. So I don't want to be killed, prematurely, and I don't want to be killed at all. But I mean, I suppose I have to die at some point. Uh, but so I enjoy my opportunities here, and so I obviously understand that, um, animals want to live, but I think it's a slightly different. I don't see like if someone's eating animals, it's I see it's not like an extinction of that soul, right? However, I guess you could say a similar thing about humans. Hey, I'm eating Jamie, but he, his soul is fine. I'm just eating his body. It's like I'm eating his shirt. What's the big deal? Yeah, so I guess that's a bit interesting, but nonetheless, I think if an animal was eating me, all right, if you got me, you got me. Fair enough. If a human was eating me, I go, you should know better, pal. Your consciousness should be, you're too conscious for that. That takes some significant degree of imbalance and fighting with your nature of being a more elevated awareness or point of consciousness. So that's why you shouldn't eat me, please. Let me know in the comments if you want to eat me. Please don't. Okay, so but say for cultural reasons, traditions, people have their ways of eating, and I think if it is really cruel, then we should change those traditions. If it's unhealthy for them, well, that's their choice, But if it's violating the ahimsa kind of thing of, if it's kind of suffering, causing suffering, needless suffering, then, like foie gras or whatever, or you're force feeding ducks or whatever it is, force feeding geese food or whatever it is, and it's like, oh, but it makes it so delicious. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe these things, I don't know. Maybe they should be changed. Or ecologically, if there's certain things where it's the tradition, but it's not good. The thing is, that's probably unlikely because in general, traditions are long-term things, so they're sustainable usually. But it might be conceivable that in the modern context, some traditions are dangerous, or maybe the population of people following the tradition is too big now, shark fin soup or something, I don't know, sharks, so many sharks get killed every year, and just for their fins too, apart from a lot of them being killed because people, kill that shark. I don't want it to eat my babies. But sharks kill almost no humans. And when they do kill surfers, etc., it's by accident, it seems. They think you're a seal. Whereas crocodiles are like, ooh, juicy human, let's go eat that human. So slightly different story. But but yes, so some traditions potentially should be stopped. But we need to be aware. But I think the thing is we shouldn't, from my point of view, where I come from, philosophically, I would say we should talk to them about why they're not good, these traditions, and using force, like the government, changing law or whatever, that would be a last resort if it was only really, really necessary as self-defense, say, against a species which can't protect itself. But in general, I think there's so much room for just communication, and I think when people really understand your point, if you're right, then if you really have your heart and head aligned and you unify around a message, you get a lot of people, then you can have a conversation and people are going to pay attention and you can negotiate. Hey, stop doing this tradition and we'll help you. We'll build these things for you, And often the people who are going to be more conscious of these problems are people from the more educated, developed societies who've got more time on their hands. And so potentially they might have things to trade, So these are some potentials. But so traditions are going to be there, but potentially if they're really out of control, we can try to talk about altering them. But it's something to be aware of. Like the idea that everyone's going to stop eating meat, I think maybe sometime down in the distant future, but not likely anytime soon. Also, by the way, with veganism, some people say that eating only plants is good for your vibrations. So spiritually, it'll help you on the path to enlightenment and awakening. And I don't know about that. I don't know if that's true. Often people have said, like, oh, just listen to your body. Teachers, spiritual teachers have said, some have said eat plants, Others have said like, well, listen to your body, give it what it needs, what it wants, rather than what your mind wants, like, ice cream or whatever. But some people say the vibrations of, there's more light in like fruit and for example, more light in it. It's like absorbing the light, whereas animals and maybe vegetables even are a bit more grounded. And so they say, light is kind of equivalent to like consciousness or cosmic energy or something. So this is kind of raising your vibration, or a kind of similar line of reasoning. People saying that, there's, as we kind of mentioned before, there's more suffering. The vibrations of suffering, these lower vibrations, are in the kind of more conscious creatures if we kill them and eat them. So that, eating more like plants and fruits, etc., might be raising your vibration. I don't know. Might be true. If it is true, I guess I'm going to go vegan. But I don't know. So let's see. Survival. Yeah. Okay. So look, with diet, if we are hungry enough, we're going to eat whatever. Basically, like cannibalism. Yikes. I mean, I think I would not go that far. I would just not let someone eat me. But I don't know how I'd do that. That'd be tricky. No one wants to starve to death. But yeah, I don't know. I would, but I think that's a bridge. Like, but the point being, there are people who have crossed that line and gone, hey, I'm so hungry, I'm just going to do that. So, but the point for us is people, will eat what they have to eat, and the vast majority of the world's population are in a significant state of poverty, and so they're going to eat whatever they can eat. So we should be aware of that, and the idea that we're all going to turn vegan tomorrow is not realistic. And for the reason I've said before, nor is it necessarily desirable, because it seems more desirable that those who aren't really into eating animals for whatever reason, they can go to more vegetarian or vegan, and other people who want to be omnivores can do it. But that what we unite around is health. Well, I guess regenerative agriculture, and ending the factory farming and industrial agriculture and fishing systems, transitioning them by voting with our dollars, and perhaps through regulations, but I'd prefer through just individual action. And anyway, they're very good at playing their political games, these big industries. So through voting with our dollars, kind of setting the new thing, like, yep, you can go whichever path you want, pescatarian, vegan, vegetarian, omnivore, carnivore, but let's agree upon these regenerative systems which enhance health, minimize suffering, and enhance the ecology. So, but survival, like if we were in a bad situation, we would eat whatever, and we need to be aware many people around the world, and even in developed countries, there are people who are, they're in a tricky situation financially. They're going to eat whatever they can get. So I think that's just something to be aware of, in the transition. So yeah. All right. Oh, another thing is, so live and let live, like, we can each do our thing and just not feel like we're separate camps. But no, we're all part of one big team, But another thing we can do is support local, So part of decentralizing the food system, which is good for just practical matters of, food security, if there was a big power out, okay, we've still got food. Or if there's a global pandemic or something, it's not all coming from overseas. So we've got like our local basis of production, and food is a big part of that. For other things too, we should be thinking about this. But also transportation costs and energy use and time use, is reduced when it's all coming from close to us. So that makes sense. I mean, if we can grow stuff ourselves, that's great. That's if you can have chickens and laying eggs, and you're growing your veggies, or you have some fruit trees, or you even keep some bees. Like that's great. That's good for everyone. Because you're taking off the load from the system, and in some dire situation, you could support other people. And anyway, you're getting connection with your food, so it's good for you psychologically, and you're getting the healthiest food because you're growing it yourself. And if you grow it organically, then you know where it's coming from. You know what's going into it. And I think when you grow stuff yourself, there's something special. Like I think literally your consciousness is the magic ingredient, the secret ingredient, love going into these things. And I swear it must be the placebo effect. I swear this tastes like the best tomato I've ever had in my whole life. Yeah, maybe it's because it's your tomato. Maybe there's a bit of you in that. Self cannibalism. Oh my god. Um, yeah. So supporting local and in general, yeah, supporting the your community obviously is good also. But and I think getting to know local farms or like your local butcher. I like to go to small businesses because also there's more control over saying like talking to them and going like, yeah, thank you. Like if I give them money for the good products, they're more likely to react to that and go, oh, okay, these are selling well. Whereas some big company, maybe they're less aware or they're just, you take what you get, Um, we're co-owned by some people who produce these things. And so they want to give us these because that saves them money. There's all these other motivations. Smaller producers and, grocers, that kind of thing, and butchers, it's a good way to, kind of, I guess, assert that change we want to see in the food system. Um, so what else? Pray tell. Um, yeah. Okay. So I think there is a certain queasiness um, some people feel about eating meat and even just animal products like dairy or eggs, etc. Honey, probably not. Everyone's on board probably, but some people just hold themselves back. But and I felt this at times when I was a kid. I kind of felt like, ugh, eating bones, this chicken off the bone. Oh my god. Um, and I don't quite know what it is, but so this is kind of more just like musings, but I kind of wonder if it seems in many ways we humans have become detached from nature and we're getting lost in abstractions, and that people are all on the internet and don't know how to socialize as much anymore, and in person someone disagrees with them and they feel like they're being attacked because they've only ever been disagreed with online, or maybe never disagreed with because they're in an echo chamber and everyone agrees with them on whatever. And if someone doesn't agree, they get censored. And okay, so so that's one example where, in terms of relationships and dealing with conflict and learning from each other, having debate, seems like that skill is maybe being lost a bit, or has been lost. Hopefully, it's coming back. And in terms of people going, all right, let's roll up our sleeves and get our hands dirty and grow some food. Like a lot of people will be like, oh my God, I never do that. Why would you do that? But it seems there has been with that, definitely there's been a movement back towards that, growing your own food, cooking your own food. That's become very fashionable even. And so but for a long time, there was this move towards, astronaut food and, TV dinners and everything being fast and efficient. And so we kind of got detached. And people, yeah, in I guess in just in many ways, or death is one. Yeah, like, how often have you seen a dead body? In India, people see dead bodies all the time. Uh, and you know, uh, especially if you're in Varanasi, where they've got the burning ghats, where you hear people coming along. Do they sing? I'm not sure, but they'll be coming along. Like 8 blokes, something, holding like a kind of, what is it, like a stretcher kind of thing, with a body, a dead body lying there, covered with red, yellow, gold, uh, orange flowers, white flowers, and they're just there, and they're being carried down to the river, the Ganges, to be burnt, and everyone in public, and everyone seeing them, they're seeing skeletons, they're seeing flesh melting off of skulls. My eyesight's not that good, so I didn't quite see the details, but yeah, pretty gnarly anyway. And so that's just normal for them, But I think in more developed societies, we kind of, I'd say in the West, we've kind of cut ourselves off from that a bit. And, hospital, everyone's kind of in a nursing home or a hospital, or they're kind of out of view, We don't really like to think we're a bit, it's the fear of death, And so, and then you see if it's at a funeral, often the person will have makeup or something on so that they look more alive. And so, and so that's one thing where it seems there are many ways where it seems that we are detached or resisting nature. Also, you look at health and, the pharmaceuticalization of health. And pharmaceuticals can do some wonderful things. Surgery can do some wonderful things. Amazing stuff that medicine can do. But in general, they're better at acute problems, dealing with acute problems. Someone's got an emergency. Let's deal with it, help them. But like chronic problems, usually it seems like they're not that good at. It's more like, traditional stuff like, diet and exercise and meditation. These kind of things have the best results, it seems, allegedly, Your Honor. So they say, so I'm told. But yet our society is kind of, the mainstream seems to be kind of detached from these simple traditional realities. Now, so I with back to food and queasiness, I kind of wonder if there isn't like, say, I don't want to insult anyone or offend, but like that it's not just, say, the ethical issue of eating meat, or the health views, the feeling that it's not healthy, or ecological stuff, but just a general kind of queasiness of like not wanting to be an animal that eats other animals, and maybe it reminding you of your own mortality. But you can really push through that, like if you want to. Like I was living with my grandma, right, for like 6 months, and we're always eating like some sort of meat, and then potatoes, and then vegetables, because potatoes aren't vegetables in Ireland, apparently. All right, they're like, of course there's spuds, but what vegetables do you want? Oh, okay. But and so, having chicken on the bone and this kind of stuff, and I just got used to it, and I was like, I just wasn't used to it for some reason before. And you can start to see, it's just protons, electrons, neutrons. It's just these superstructures of cells and molecules and whatever. It's just a bone. It was earth, and then it was eaten by some chicken that then had a baby, and now it's a bone in this living chicken, and then that chicken goes on and this was life, and then it's killed, and the meat, and we eat the meat, and the bones are there, and then I'm looking at the bone, and it was grass, and then goes into the compost heap, and then it turns back into grass, and meanwhile it was always protons, electrons, and neutrons. And this cycle of life, and life eats life eats life, seems like maybe we're a little hesitant to admit what it is, and to admit that we're part of it. But yeah, so that's just a little amusing. Who knows? Now, yes. So, okay. So I think there might also, with animals, eating animals, we might sometimes anthropomorphize them a little bit. Like we're thinking, like treating them like they're like people, and maybe they are more like people than we realize, like cows or whatever. Or maybe, we're kind of thinking, this is Henry the cow, and Henry, he loves doing this, and maybe it's totally different. Maybe we just don't understand, and like the cow is like, hey, where did Jeff go? Yeah, well, guess he's gone. All right. And then maybe that cow never thinks of Jeff ever again, and Jeff has been, killed for meat or whatever. We don't know, Or maybe that cow will remember. Jeff hasn't been here in a year. We don't really know. It's a bit of a mystery, but I think sometimes, say, we do that with animals to some extent. Like, but then maybe that's a good thing, that we're kind of trying to be as empathetic as possible. But I do think on a basic level, we are all one. And just to bring it back, eat what you want, but try to. I think what we should try to do is try to be the change we want to see in the world. And so don't be afraid of what you think is true. And just remember that if you think you're losing something by, oh no, these ideas are kind of leading me that way. Like, the worst scenario is where you lie to yourself and now you don't even know what's true. You're a prisoner in your own mind, That's not a good fate, And it's not even for selfish reasons, it's not even helping you. Because the true you is truth. It's aligned with truth, and your soul wants to do what's right and what's real. And so you can do what feels right, and try to understand what's right and what's real, and just do your best and baby steps. Maybe you're not ready for some changes. That's fine. Just we can be honest about that and say, hey, I know I should do this, but I'm not ready for it yet. Okay, that's a bit, heavy on the conscience, but at least I'm being honest and I know where I'm heading, and maybe I'll get there, and I can have the self-respect of saying at least I'm telling myself the truth, even if I don't have the self-respect of being able to act upon that truth yet. I think that's better than telling yourself that you're all good and you're the hero of, even though deep down it's not true. It's based on a deception, self-deception. So, and with others, I think, be honest and communicative, but there's a balance between evangelism and preaching. We don't want to do that, but at the same time, we do need to protect the earth and try to take care of the animals and improve our health and the health of our brothers and sisters on this earth, so that we can kind of keep things in balance, because things are looking a bit out of balance recently. And as things go forward, it seems like the imbalance is escalating a little bit. So I think it's a very practical thing, like how we eat and touches a lot of nerves, raises a lot of emotions. But I think just do what makes sense to you and try to stretch your understanding of what's going on. That's what I'm trying to do. And even from this podcast, I'm thinking I'm probably going to have to be a bit more, I want to be, and I will be more strict with when I'm eating out, making sure that it's the dairy and eggs and meat is coming from ethical sources, because that's something I've been a bit lax with. But at the end of the day, I think, we're all, I mean, how many times can I say it? But it's life experiencing itself, and I think we shouldn't take it too seriously at the end of the day. But it is important to do our best, and to try to be as healthy as we can, maximize the ahimsa, the well-being of these earthlings we're sharing earth with, and protect Mother Nature. So let me know what you think. That was a huge podcast, I think. So what was that? I'm not even sure how long that was. But so that would be, I think my head is empty of thoughts about food and diet now. So there you go. I hope that was useful. If you enjoyed this podcast, then go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to know when there's more. There'll be one every week. That's it. So thank you, and go eat some food. Good food.